So Jordan Peterson got suspended on Twitter for making a tweet about an actress with the last name Page. I'll just put it that way, who's in the Umbrella Academy. He made a tweet referencing an individual named Ellen Page, who now goes by Elliot Page. How does that work for you? And is refusing to apologize. So it looks like it's going to be a permanent suspension. But there is really, really big news. Jordan Peterson and Dennis Prager have signed with the Daily Wire. The Daily Wire announced they got 890,000 paying subscribers. And I was so jealous. I punched my monitor. I was like, oh, the Daily Wire. No, I'm just kidding. I'm really excited for these guys because their victory is our victory. Watching the corporate press and the establishment fizzle out and implode. CNN Plus couldn't even fail on time. They ended up imploding a few days early. It's amazing. And then the Daily Wire is taking off. To see all of this success, to see Jordan Peterson getting more funding, to see money coming in, to see everyone supporting the Daily Wire, it's just good news. It's just all around good news. And because it's not all good news. So I decided, we were originally going to leave with the Joe Biden story where he said, you're going to pay high gas prices as long as it takes for him to win in Ukraine. Great. Joe Biden's political ambitions are going to dictate why you can't afford to pay for gas. But, I decided it's a little dark and, let's switch it up and talk about the good news. I mean, it is kind of bad news that Jordan Peterson got suspended, but we'll talk about that. Plus, we got some crazy news. The EPA is lost in the Supreme Court. Supreme Court basically said the EPA can't regulate carbon emissions, which is a huge knock on federal authority. So now it's just hilarious. All of the losses the left has received, gun rights, Roe v. Wade, and now the EPA, they are freaking out. AOC, of course, going on Colbert and saying that the Supreme Court's illegitimate or whatever. They're extremist. Nancy Pelosi says they're extremist. Well, they're really, really upset. But the Democrats are going to use all of that energy to try and win in the midterms. We'll see, because I'm not convinced. After all of the really bad stuff that happened to the left because the Supreme Court made correct rulings, when Joe Biden comes out and says, you're going to pay high gas prices as long as it takes, I'm pretty sure people are going to be like, as long as it takes is until you're voted out of office, dude, because it's not going to be that long. So we'll talk about all that. But before we get started, head over to timcast.com and become a member to help support our work. The Daily Wire has 890,000 subscribers. So we just need to add about 800 and some odd thousand people to our website, and then we can be as big as they are. But we're doing a lot of stuff here as well. We brought in Jamie Kilstein to help us do the vlog, Cast Castle, which we're slowly building it up to kind of like a fictional version of of our office. So it'll be like a sitcom with gags and bits. We've always been trying to do that, but you have to slowly build up to it. And we're not just throwing tons of money into it. But with your support, we can ramp up production across the board. We got Tales from the Inverted World launching season 2 tomorrow. It's going to be big, plus the book. So we got a bunch of stuff in the works. We've got new people coming on board. We've got new shows planned. And with your support as members, there won't just be one massive company taking over the cultural establishment. There will be two. Timcast will be doing it as well. So sign up. We're going to have a members-only show coming up for you at 11 p.m. That will be at timcast.com. Smash that like button. Subscribe to this channel. Share the show with your friends. Without further ado, joining us to talk about all of these fun stories is Spike Cohen.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on.
Who are you?
I am Spike Cohen. I am the founder and chair of an organization I started about a month ago called You Are the Power, which is a grassroots libertarian political activism group. I am a retired business owner. I am first and foremost the husband to objectively the greatest woman to ever walk this planet, Tasha Cohen. And in my spare time, I cyberbully federal agencies and elected officials until they delete their social media accounts.
Has that actually happened?
A few times, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we've got, I think, 12 total.
Wow.
Mostly local and state, but yeah, a few DAs we've chased off the internet and stuff
But
like
you don't
that.
mean like literally cyberbully. You mean challenge their authority.
Yeah, so I should say cyberbully is, and we don't threaten or anything like that, but really just, I'm actually almost like saccharine sweet in the way. I'm like, hi there, how are you doing? By the way, can we talk about this thing? And so I'm very congenial about it, but in a way that makes them want to leave the internet forever.
So it'll be interesting talking about the EPA stuff with you, especially.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
We also have Mary Morgan.
Hello, thank you for having me on a second time. I didn't say anything to get you canceled last time. I'm still in your good graces, right?
So you earned your way back on.
Yeah. I'm the co-host of Pop Culture Crisis. I'm going to shill it all night tonight.
That's gonna be great.
We just got over 30,000, so now it's the race to 40,000 with Inverted World.
100,000.
Eventually.
Pop Culture Crisis is one of our shows. So Mary and Brett Dasovic host the show.
Yes.
Talking about pop culture issues and cultural issues as well. It's the more cultural side of the conversation. So we talk a lot about heavy politics and stuff like the EPA and Joe Biden. And you guys were talking about like woke Hollywood stuff.
Yeah. Today we were talking about how James Bond is getting a reinvention, which could mean something very bad.
He's going to be a black woman, I think. Right?
Yeah, maybe paraplegic too, I heard.
No. Really?
No.
Oh. I believe
the fact
it.
that you believe it, it says a lot. Yeah.
All right. We also got Ian.
What's up, everybody? I'm actually going to be on Pop Culture Crisis tomorrow with Mary and Brett. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so come and check it out. And I'm looking forward to communicating tonight with compassion, not letting my emotions get the best of me, just listening. Well, not just listening, but listening in addition to talking.
Yes.
Excellent strategy. Pop Culture Crisis is 100% a house-like hobby. I'm always on Wednesdays. Sometimes I go on with Andy. Ian's on Fridays. Got a bunch of our journalists on there. It's always a good time. You guys should for sure check it out. Let's get to 40K next.
Yeah.
All right. Let's jump to this first story from the National Post. Jordan Peterson suspended from Twitter. Says it might as well be a ban because I won't apologize. Quote, "If I can't be let back on because I won't apologize, I could care less," Jordan Peterson told the National Post after Twitter suspended his account over a tweet about Elliot Page. I don't think Jordan Peterson said anything about Elliot Page.
Did not, no.
He was referring to an Ellen Page. On June 28th, the controversial author, I like how they say he's controversial, clinical psychologist and professor emeritus at the University of Toronto lost access to most of his Twitter account features because of a tweet he posted earlier in the week that used transgender actor Elliot Page's former name and suggested he had his breasts removed by a criminal physician. So he said, quote, "I penned an irritated tweet in response to one of the latest happenings on the increasingly heated culture war front," Peter told the National Post. As far as Peterson is concerned, the temporary suspension might as well have been a ban because he would rather die than delete the tweet in question, he said. Does the tweet stay up when that happens?
I think so. I'm going to have to check it out.
Stays
Really?
up private, I think.
Private?
They want you to be the one to take it down, to admit you're
Which
wrong.
is so psychologically manipulative.
That's a very psychological move. It's like no one can see it, but you have to remove it yourself. Like we could remove it, but you have to do it, or you can't come back on.
Atone.
It's very interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like making a kid go out into the woods and pick his own switch.
Yeah, it is very much so.
Yes, but
Stop
I think
giving
it's a
them
legal
ideas.
thing. I think it's a
Is it?
legal thing.
Is it?
Yeah, I think they're like, we can't tell
Their
you.
liability.
Yeah, like we can't remove it because then we're directly involved or something like
And
that.
also, then where's the proof? If
It's
you're like, hey,
probab-
where's your proof that I violated the terms? There's nothing up.
Right, but then there's also, I mean, like Facebook's removed all sorts of stuff I put up over the years, and I'm sure Twitter's actually been fairly good to me on most stuff. But in terms of, I mean, I think they can remove stuff, but maybe only if it's like you said, violating the terms. And if this is something that doesn't technically violate their terms, they're like, okay, well, we're just going to make you remove it. I'm honestly not sure what it is. It also might be because he's so prominent. They don't want to remove it. They want him to remove it and make that, like atonement for it.
Yes.
I honestly don't know.
If this was a small account, they would have gotten nuked.
They just,
in 2
get
seconds.
nuked. Yeah.
Yep.
Gotta send a message.
But I think the principal issue as to why he got suspended was because he said criminal physician, I think is what he said, right? Is that what he said?
Yeah, that's what he said.
What's his exact
Criminal
tweet?
physician.
Right. And that's it right there. The insinuation of a crime or something is probably why they took it down.
Oh, okay.
Dead naming.
Yeah.
Yep. Not dead naming.
No?
No,
I thought
I
that was
don't-
against their policy.
I don't know. I issued a tweet like so often when people get suspended for stuff like this, I will tweet something out
Similar.
in the same vein, but specifically like jumping over the landmines of the rules.
Yeah.
So that I can effectively say something similar, but to prove a point, kind of just like make the point. Yeah, I didn't get suspended. Maybe I don't know. Knock on wood. Spoke too soon. But after I heard that Jordan Peterson got suspended, I tweeted, "Who is Ellen Page and what does breast removed mean?"
Yeah.
So by posing it as a question, the issue is with YouTube and all these platforms, they don't want you attacking people. That's the real issue. They don't mind you criticizing people, but what Twitter, YouTube, and these other platforms have said, behind the scenes, or I mean, actually, they say it overtly, is their goal is a healthier conversation. So if you're being critical of someone, but you're doing it calmly, they're fine with it.
But if you start calling names and stuff, then that's when they. So you think it was more about the criminal accusation than about calling Elliot Ellen?
It's kind of vague, but the idea is these big social media platforms, they don't want to cultivate a culture around everyone throwing rocks and mud at each other.
Right.
So I talked to Google And they told me, because like, we have Google partners. I actually know a ton of people work at Google. And they said, we're trying to just clamp down on people who are angry, nasty people who make their shows based on just being nasty and mean.
Right.
And they were like, obviously your show is nothing like that, so you have nothing to worry about. And I was like, I mean, I don't believe you, to be completely honest, but I appreciate you said that to me.
Right.
Just as a side note, I looked up the terms of service for Twitter, and it says they do prohibit targeting others with repeated slurs, tropes, other content that intends to dehumanize, degrade, or reinforce negative, harmful stereotypes. This includes targeted misgendering or dead naming. So I think that might have been what did it.
So that might have been it.
Not sure.
Or it might have been both,
yeah.
yeah.
So if you're a small account on Twitter, you get no benefit of the doubt.
Right, of course.
They just nuke you in 2 seconds. They don't care. For Jordan Peterson, if the putting criminal in there, I think is what put him over the edge of they're saying like you're attacking, you're being mean and nasty or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't think it was the dead naming. It probably played a role.
Probably couldn't help.
But I don't think Jordan Peterson knows who Elliot Page is or anything about that. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think he just saw something and was like, I can't believe they did this. Oh, I'm gonna tweet about it. It's criminal. And then they were like, you're gone.
Yeah. So it might have been the dead naming that got their attention, but the letter of the rule that was broken was the criminal accusation.
Yeah, here's an interesting question, right? It is true that for a while, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook and big social media platforms, we're seeing a lot of people become very prominent off of just being really nasty.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is the left is still extremely nasty, and they get away with it all the time. So I recognize it's a problem. My problem is like maybe you guys should actually do something to calm people down and foster healthier conversations instead of just banning conservatives.
Yeah, this is why last night we talked about Christianity. I brought up like the cult of Christianity. I think when you're criticizing a cult, it's different than criticizing the individuals. If you're criticizing the tenets of a cult, like the transgender ideologies of like, I was born in a male body, but I want to call myself a woman now. If you question that, that's really not a big problem. If you go after the individuals that are experiencing it, then you're on hot water. Like he brought up Elliot's name, Elliot Page. And now that's like, now you're bringing someone into it, an innocent bystander, almost a part, someone that's part of it.
Yeah. I think there's something to be said, a difference between someone giving their, in their mind, principled take either way on the transgender debate or discussion, and like, for example, on the anti side, going after making fun of suicide rates or something, and going after individual people with memes about suicide or something like that. That goes over the line of having a discussion about their disagreement with the idea of gender not being tied to biological sex, and actually saying, well, I'm going to attack this person. So that would be an example of that, and obviously there are other examples on the other side as well. But it's the difference between having even a heated debate and going at someone personally, like you said, to your point, attacking them.
Well, here's an issue. Jordan Peterson has a lot of very, very important things to say, least of which is his comments about Elliot Page.
Right.
Should he just say, fine, delete the tweet so he can carry on saying the more important things to his 2.8 million followers? This is the challenge. I think Jordan should probably set up a Truth Social account or something where he can tweet all day about these ideas,
right,
but not give up the battlefield over this one thing. It's tough, isn't it?
That's a judgment call for him to make. He has to. It really comes down to he has to decide how important what he was trying to say in that tweet was, right? Like, is that worth giving that up? And it's not just what's in that tweet, but the idea of something that Jordan Peterson has said a lot is, I'm not going to say something that I don't agree with just because it'll make things easier. So if that's, the hill he's willing to die on, even if it's not necessarily in and of itself that important, he may back away from the whole thing. And that's, I'm not even saying that I agree with that decision being made, but he's the one that built that platform or built that audience, and it was on that kind of principle. So it's a judgment call, man. Like, if he asked me what should I do, I'm not sure I'd have a good answer for him.
It feels like a metaphor for this would be, or some kind of example, Jordan Peterson, they swept the leg. They knocked him down. And he says, you're not supposed to sweep the leg, so I'm done fighting. And it's like, whoa. You didn't lose. The fight's still happening.
Yeah.
Don't walk away just because they pulled a cheap shot.
Right.
Get up and try and win. And so the concern I have here is, I get that it was bad that they're censoring him. He should be allowed to express these ideas. They should not be censored. But if Jordan Peterson has a million important things to say, and one of them got him knocked down, it's not only did he say it, what he said has been blasted off a millionfold.
Everyone's seen it, yeah.
It's been seen substantially more than ever before, and he can say, I got my message out there. Let's get back to work.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge with the censorship issue is everybody's saying, like, we shouldn't be on YouTube. And I'm like, retreat from the battlefield so that we can go into a high school parking lot and talk to no one?
Yeah.
Or recognize there are certain things that will get us kicked off the battlefield, and we got to fight with what, space we have.
Yeah.
And then we set up the Timcast.com, members only show so that we can try and still do this. We are working on stuff behind the scenes in terms of infrastructure. Just we can only go as fast as humans can go, but hopefully we'll have some big announcements coming soon. And I think I kind of feel like Jordan's made his point. He can come back on Twitter and he can start smack talking again. You should go for it.
I think you made a good point, Spike, that he's made kind of his career around, or a big part of his career is like, I'm not going to use you cannot compel me to say something I don't believe. And in this situation, I think if he did recant and say, okay, fine, I'll do whatever you want, I'll bend the knee, that he'll lose 40%, 30% of his followers, or like they'll just lose faith in him. And right now he's got the faith of humanity on his side. So wherever he goes, whatever he does, people will listen, people will follow.
He also could be playing the long game of expecting Elon Musk to purchase Twitter so he can come back triumphant however many weeks, months from now and say, see, look, I didn't bend. I said what I said, and I'm not going to back off. And you can take that to the bank that I'll never back off of something that I believe. And if that ends up playing out that way, then he ended up playing a much longer game than the rest of us.
Here's an idea: he can take his tweet down, and then as soon as his account is reopened, issue a new tweet saying, "Follow me on Truth Social because screw this platform, they're censorious." Try and pull as many of their users off the platform as possible to make them suffer.
Yeah.
That's one way to do it. I mean, look, if Jordan Peterson's saying he's going to nuke, he's never coming back to Twitter, it's like, all right, give him one final show. Come back on and be like, come on, everybody, party's out here. Let's get out of here.
And then delete your own account.
And then, or you just put a big, if you want to see what Jordan Peterson say, here's the link to Truth Social.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the way you got to do it, man.
Do minds. Truth Social's Trump will ban you for talking crap about him on Truth Social.
That's true.
I have to give a shout out to my friend Reed Coverdale, because what he does is whenever a new, so-called free speech platform comes out, he immediately goes on, creates an account, and says a bunch of stuff that ticks conservatives off. And so, immediately go on there and be like, I'm not even sure if I should say this stuff because we're streaming on YouTube.
Smart.
But saying a bunch of various things that might tick people off on the center right, and see how quickly it takes him to get kicked off. And it's usually measured in minutes or hours. And so he says, these typically, and I'm not sure about Truth Social particularly, but in general, any of these things, it's more not necessarily free speech entirely, but more conservative friendly speech, as opposed to the Twitter version where it's more progressive or centrist friendly speech. He has a so far he's batting 1,000 for getting knocked off these platforms.
Shout out to Reed Coverdale.
Yes.
Nice job.
Let's talk about what's going on with Jordan Peterson, man. This is Jordan Peterson News Day. Daily Wire, the new streaming service, Daily Wire Plus, signed Jordan Peterson to a multi-year deal. I was laughing all night. So this news came out basically during our show yesterday. Yeah. And then when I found out, I started laughing. I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
CNN Plus couldn't last 3 weeks. They were supposed to implode within a month, and then even a few days early, they couldn't even fail on time. And watching their just collapse. Then CNN had this announcement that their daytime host was just like, I'm quitting. I'm tired of being tired. I don't want to do this anymore. And then Daily Wire is expanding rapidly. They're signing new shows. They're launching new shows. They're bringing in Dennis Prager and Jordan Peterson. Mm-hmm. In April, they had 600,000 subscribers. Now they have 890,000 subscribers. And so it's just a good day. You know what I say? I was saying this earlier. I'm not motivated by money. I'm not doing this because I want to buy a Ferrari, a Lambo, and build a mansion or anything like that. No, I would love nothing more than to walk out of my hut into a field of fresh fruit and farm them and smile upon a grateful universe, knowing that we have snapped out of existence the corporate press and the establishment garbage, manipulative trash. I want to see the liars called out. I want to see accountability from the establishment. The Daily Wire is doing that. Good for them. We want to do that too. That's what I want to do every single day. So when I see the Daily Wire pulling this off and I see CNN failing, I know that we are winning.
It's a big turn in the tide, man. That's a extremely established turn in the momentum of, if you want to call it culture war, like the sense of they've not only have they increased their subscriber base by like 20-30% in like 3 months.
Yeah.
Which was massive.
What was it? 600,000 to 900,000?
Yep.
That's a 50% increase. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is really, really monumental.
12
That's from one documentary. That's from Matt's
Mostly,
What
yes.
is a Woman?
What is
That's
a Woman?
big part
Is that
of
what
it.
that came from?
And I think Gina Carano, of course, the Terror on the Prairie came out. Gina's just a superstar right now. I mean, she's a big part of the momentum of that and deserves the notoriety she's getting.
Let's just do some math real quick. $12 per month, 300,000 people per month.
It's like 1.7 million.
No, it's 3.6.
3.6 million per month.
Per month, added on top of their existing 600,000. So they're hitting like, I think the math is $10.6 million per month. Per month.
That's just in subscriptions
In
too.
just
And that's not
subscriptions,
counting their ad revenue.
yeah. Yeah.
Man, I'm
Merchandise,
jealous.
all that stuff. Yeah.
We got to get 300 employees. 890,000 website, But, it's a snowball rolling downhill. They've been doing this for 7-8 years now.
Right.
So they're really, really taking off. And, man, it just feels good, man. Sitting back and just seeing their success. It was really funny because when the news broke, I tweeted out saying, holy ish. And then I have these lefty journalists being like, haha, LOL, and laughing. And I'm just like, bro, you're like on the verge of being unemployed. What are you laughing about? You're gonna go manage an AMC? Like, what are you doing?
I got question now: is Jordan an American citizen? Is he going to get his American citizenship after this? Like he's
Canadian. I don't know.
Moving to Tennessee. Is he going to go to Nashville? He's probably gonna, or is he just keeping on? I don't know.
I don't think he has to be an American citizen to do a contract with.
No, but does he get to become one now? I know he's fed up with the Canadian government. I mean, he said some really, really. He's one of Justin Trudeau's probably most accurate, harshest critics, and justifiably so.
I don't know if you know this, but I'm pretty sure you can just buy citizenship. Like if you're rich.
At that point, yeah. At that point, and then you reach a certain point where it makes sense to renounce your citizenship for tax purposes.
Right.
So I'm not sure where he falls in that spectrum on whether it makes sense for him to become a citizen or to renounce it.
Well, are Canadian taxes higher or lower than the U.S.?
The income tax, well, now with the increase.
I think our taxes might be higher.
I think that at the higher level, the income tax is higher. Where Canada gets you isn't necessarily the income tax being higher. And in fact, their corporate tax for the larger corporations is lower. A lot of American companies like Burger King was a famous one that moved to being a Canadian company for the corporate tax purpose. It's the property taxes and the sales taxes. It's the middle class that they're hitting with the real taxes. The rich aren't the ones getting it.
Also, the censorship tax, which is unquantifiable. It's kind of like Einstein fleeing Nazi Germany before it got bad. Like he saw the writing on the wall and was like, I'm out.
They've also had the not allowed to leave your province unless you're vaccinated tax that they finally lifted earlier this month. So, if you're talking about overall burden, then it goes beyond property taxes.
I saw a picture from a Canadian airport and they were like, there's like 4-hour waits or 6-hour waits at the airport. And it's just bags, this huge line.
Yep.
And what is he putting in there? It's all Trudeau's fault, what he's putting these people through.
Yep.
I just don't believe these people are happy. I just can't imagine they're happy living in Canada. Yeah. All the Canadian people I know are like trying to come to America. I'm not even kidding though.
Yeah.
And then it was funny. I was hanging out with some Canadian friends and I was ragging on Canada and they were getting really mad. They were like, "You Americans are so arrogant." And I'm like, "You're trying so hard to come here, dude." And they're like, "That's still Americans are so arrogant." And I'm like, "Yeah." And you want to be here, dude.
Yeah.
Canada's getting bad.
I agree that American arrogance is grotesque because we really need to live the ideals of the Constitution. It's not fair to like rest on our laurels because they worked so hard and intelligently to build that awesome document. And
yeah, I don't know. I think this country is gonna implode. Like I didn't want to lead with this story, but I was talking about the DOD earlier, saying they're going to keep performing abortions regardless of whether the states ban them.
Right.
And I'm like, what happens if a woman? Let's say you've got an active service personnel who lives in Texas, where they've just banned abortion. And she goes to a military base to get an abortion. And they have a civilian doctor contracting on the military base to perform abortions.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, I don't know about Texas, but I know there are laws that say that if you leave to pursue an abortion or aid and abet someone getting an abortion, you can be criminally charged. So I'm feeling like in Texas, if you live in the state and then go to federal jurisdiction, the federal government's like, don't worry, you can't be prosecuted for what we do here. It's legal. When you come back, they'll be like, no, we have a law that says it doesn't matter where you go to do it. It's illegal. So I think about stuff like that, and I'm like, yeah, I think the U.S. is kind of about to explode, you know. But you know, I say that just to provide a little like juxtaposition to this good news about the culture war, because I don't think it means that the end is nigh. It just means we're in for a conflict,
A revolution.
or something.
Something.
What I mean, from the libertarian take, what we're hoping for is to move towards peaceful decentralization, and the first step in that is, and this is something I'm working on with You Are the Power, is local, county, and state level nullification of bad laws higher up the food chain that they don't like.
Like
And-
the NFA.
Like the NFA.
Yeah.
Missouri became a Second Amendment sanctuary state.
And I think New Hampshire just did.
Yes. And what the ATF has already said, and Border Patrol had to say this with the immigration sanctuary states, and I mean, we know that they've had to do this with all the cannabis sanctuary states, that without the local authorities doing the like over 90% of the heavy lifting in the actual enforcement of these laws, it's functionally impossible for them to be able to do it.
Love to see it.
Good. That's good.
Well, California started it. They wanted to do all the immigration stuff, and now we're going to see all the two-way stuff.
And the cannabis stuff.
And the cannabis stuff.
Immigration
There you
and
go.
cannabis. Okay, great. Well, now we're doing it for everything.
That's right.
And the beauty of that is not just the real world implications of being able to nullify bad state and federal policy at the local level. It also empowers the citizen to know that their vote isn't just cast into the ether. They can take over their city, their county, and eventually their state, and get rid of all the garbage that they don't have the wherewithal to stop at Capitol Hill. They can just stop it from being effectively enforced where they live.
Where we are right now in Maryland, there are, I think it's 3 counties signed letters saying they wanted to secede from Maryland to join West Virginia. It's never going to happen. But the county we're in actually declared a two-way sanctuary. It doesn't mean a whole lot because the state didn't.
Yeah.
And so you still got to get clearance from the state police to make sure, because the laws make no sense here for guns. But up in New Hampshire, the governor just signed a bill that said they're no longer going to cooperate with the feds. And people need to understand the feds don't have the ability to police this
At
country.
all. It's not even close.
The states have to do it for them. So the interesting thing is when I'm reading about what was happening with the DOD basically saying like, we're going to keep doing abortions regardless of what the state law is, I'm like, can federal agents be arrested for breaking state laws? Do you know the answer to that question?
I mean, the states can certainly arrest them for it. It's then going to have to work its way through adjudication to see if that's upheld.
The simple answer is, well, obviously, of course, right? If an FBI agent is caught like robbing a bank,
Yep.
it's of course he's going to get charged. But what I mean is, if in their duties as federal officers, they break state law, can the state arrest them?
I think you have a duty to do it because, I mean, the union as it stands is just a contract amongst the states. The only reason the federal government even exists is because we're letting it exist per our contract with the Constitution.
Well, they say that federal, so this is the interesting thing. They say it's a supremacy clause, things like that.
Yeah.
The federal government's laws supersede the state. So if California says weed's legal and the feds say no, it's not, the feds can go into California and enforce their law. But what about the inverse? What if the feds say a cop carrying a high-capacity magazine, as it's defined by these blue states, they say, no, police aren't allowed to carry those either now. And the feds go in with Glock 17s. Can the state say, I don't care who you are, I don't care what you're doing, you broke the law?
I think
That's what I can't find.
I think you've predicted the next one of the next big contentious things to be handled at the federal court level, because that is likely to happen as the gap between what the federal government's priorities and rules are and what the states' priorities and rules are. That's going to lead to conflict, and it's not happening in Washington D.C. It's not happening on federal land. It's happening on state property, in state jurisdictions. That's who's likely to get arrested. We know the feds will arrest someone at the state level, in a Texas second.
Let me actually let's pull the story up and dive into it. We have this from NBC News. Pentagon says Supreme Court's Roe ruling won't affect abortions on military facilities.
Right.
The military will continue providing abortions in cases of rape or incest or when the mother's life is at risk, a top Pentagon official said. Okay, Texas does not allow those exceptions. Rape and incest, only the health of the mother,
right.
the life of the mother. So my question is, let's say you have a civilian doctor and a female Army personnel.
Yeah.
She lives off base. She's married. Civilian doctor does not live on base,
Yeah.
but he contracts the hospital on base. Or not even that. He doesn't need to be civilian. Let's say he's active duty military as well, lives off base. They both, living under the jurisdiction of Texas, are subject to its laws and rules. If you are in the Army and you break the law, you face military court and civilian court. You get in trouble 2 times.
Yep.
So we know they have to obey the laws. Obviously, you can't have a person just be like, I'm in the military, so I can do what I want. So they go into the military base. She gets an abortion. The doctor performs it. There is now a record of that having occurred. And the U.S. government has said you cannot be criminally charged or penalized civilly for having this procedure, regardless of the state law.
Right.
But some of these states have actually, I don't know if they've passed them yet. They say if you aid and abet an abortion, you're guilty of a crime. So that means the doctor and the woman, regardless of where it's performed, coming back into that state could be arrested because they have committed the crime, according to that state.
Right.
What happens if the state then says, we don't care what the Fed said, and they arrest this contractor or 2 active duty military, and the military is like, you can't arrest them, it's not illegal, and they say, it is here.
Yeah.
What happens when states start arresting military personnel?
Well, I think there are 3 things there. One is what happens when the states start arresting them. The second part is a law that says you can't do something effectively somewhere else, somewhere outside of our jurisdiction, is that going to be able to hold up in court? And then also the question of specific to this, what if the feds just stop recording it? What if the feds just, it's, no questions asked, abortions being performed, and they just don't, have
I got
any
one more
record or
for
anything?
you.
Okay.
Woman's in the military. She is married. They get pregnant. The man says, I really think we should have this kid. And she says, I don't.
Yeah.
And he says, I refuse to allow the abortion to happen. I think it's wrong. I think it's murder. And she says, too bad. He knows where she goes. He knows who does it. And he reports it to the local state, to the state police. Maybe they're not married because I don't know if a husband would do that. But let's say there's she hooks up with a guy.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
And the guy's just like,
The father,
I refuse to allow you to get an abortion.
Yeah.
I reject this. So he reports her. Doesn't matter if the feds are tracking it or not. If that you have a witness come out, and then the feds take the active duty person in, say, we're going to interrogate you as part of our investigation. And she says, yes, I did it. And it was legal. It was on federal jurisdiction. And they say, okay, stand up, hands behind your back. You're under arrest. You have right to remain silent. She's like, what? How's this happening? And they say, the law states if you aid and abet an abortion and go somewhere, it doesn't matter where it took place. I don't know if Texas has that ruling, but the general idea, I suppose, is it's not necessarily the same thing as, I think it might have been like Iowa or Idaho, where they said if you aid and abet. But if this military base is in Texas, the feds might be like, it happened on federal jurisdiction. Texas might still say, you're still in Texas. You still live under our laws. And regardless of that, let's just say letter of the law. No, they can't do that, right? Okay, well, according to James Buchanan, states weren't legally allowed to secede either. Didn't stop them.
Right.
So what happens if you get a Christian conservative prosecutor in Texas who says we have made it illegal to kill babies, and then you went into a military base and killed a baby? I'm gonna charge you, and I'm gonna take it all the way to the top because I believe it's the right thing to do. It doesn't matter what the federal government thinks they're protected on, and then what? The feds are going to be like trying to pull their people out of the jail, filing lawsuits. Yeah. Does it end in a legal battle, or does it end with the state police surrounding federal law enforcement vehicles at gunpoint and saying you're under arrest? What happens then if a federal agent tries getting the woman out, even though she's a known fugitive of state law? Is it possible Texas then says you've aided and abetted a fugitive? I don't care if you're doing it. The feds have no authority to undermine our laws. Think about it this way. Let's say a federal agent, let's say a female member of the Army murders a kid, hits him with a car, and it was on duty, driving a military vehicle, and the kid dies. And the state says, you were driving recklessly. We have a witness. You're under arrest. And then the military says, no, she was active duty. It was an accident. We reject those charges. What happens?
I mean, that's obvious, right? Like if it's on, in the jurisdiction of the state. Where this gets mucky would be if she did it on a military base and the military said, we're handling it, and the state said, no, it's in our jurisdiction. My understanding of that is that wouldn't be their jurisdiction.
All right, let's try this.
But we could also talk about, there could be a prosecutor who says, reality of power, stop me.
Right.
The court said I can't do it. The Supreme Court said I can't do it. I'm doing it anyway. Come and stop me.
Here, so just throwing hypotheticals out there. I'm not saying any of these are like highly probable. Pizza delivery guy. He drives on a base, and they're like, "What are you here for?" And he's like, "I got to deliver a pizza to base housing." And they're like, "All right, we're gonna search your vehicle, and then you're cool." And then he's driving in, and then while on duty as an MP, she crashes into him, flips him over, killing him. And she was not paying attention, and she made an illegal lane change. Yeah. And the military says, "We're not prosecuting this. We think it was an accident." And then the family of the driver says, "He's a civilian who's in our state. We reject this. We want him charged."
Yeah.
I think it's highly likely in most circumstances in that case, they'd be like, it happened on a military base. The feds are going to have to handle it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I believe there's already some longstanding precedent. Both, I'm not even sure if it had to be judicial. I think that's understanding that on military base, that is federal land. That's not state jurisdiction.
So where the question arises then, where this starts to become more akin to the Civil War, is women going to military bases when they're not active duty to get abortions. The state knows they're doing it. Does the state say to the federal government, stop breaking our laws or else? And the feds say, it's our military base, you can't do anything about it. And they say, we will send in state police to arrest these women. The moment they step foot out, they're getting arrested because you are like, if people start going on a military basis, they say, and again, I know this is a bit of a stretch, they're going to be providing abortions. I think it's typically only done for military personnel on military bases. But there are people on the left arguing for effectively
making them sanctuaries for abortions.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
So my suggestion is this the direction we may be going?
Oh, very much. I mean, you want to talk about a culture war. There is a gap between those who see this as, a woman exerting autonomy over her body against a clump of cells, a parasite, and other people are saying, no, this is a murder of a baby every bit as much as if the woman were to turn around and murder someone standing next to him. And it's hard to have a compromise between that, right? And so if this plays out and both sides are willing to go to the trenches over it, this could lead to what we're talking about, or even worse, on just even this specific subject.
You made a good point, reality of power. That they can say whatever they want.
It doesn't
matters
matter.
in who's willing to do something about it.
Yep.
And so I suppose the issue is, let's take the moral issue of today with abortion and go back in time to slavery. So let's say in the North, they said, we've abolished slavery. And then let's say it's in Pennsylvania. And so it's right on the border of Maryland, which was a slave state. And then you have a military base there that has slaves, and they're like, we don't care that you abolished this. We're keeping the slaves.
We're just going to do it anyway. And
John Brown would probably lose it over that, right? The abolitionist would be like, don't care.
Yep.
You can't do this. It's wrong.
Yep.
So what I fear is, it's just crazy to me that Texas would come out so strong. No exceptions for rape or incest. And the military says, we will. Like, we're getting to that point where you just need to imagine it this way. If abortion is murder, at least in the eyes of the Christian conservatives, what they're basically saying is we will keep killing children and you can't stop us.
Right.
Yeah, at a certain point, law enforcement's going to be like, we have codified this in our law that you cannot do this, and you are doing it.
Yeah.
Well, it's not murder. I don't care what people believe. It's not murder. Let's keep that in mind.
Why is it not murder?
It's not illegal.
In Texas, it is.
Well, in certain places, if you do it in the wrong spot, you might consider it a murder. I don't know if they
Are you saying from a legal standpoint?
From a legal standpoint, murder is a legal term. It's killing. Right. It's definitely a form of homicide. I mean, it depends on if you consider the lump of cells a human.
Right.
At what point are they legally human?
It is illegal in Texas. It is the unlawful killing of a person in Texas.
Is it a person from inception? Did they codify that?
All I know is that abortions are illegal in Texas.
Yeah, I don't think they've codified it as murder. They've just as a criminal action.
Okay, so it's
but,
still
but
not
I don't.
murder.
Because otherwise it would be. It wouldn't just be going after providers. It would be if you have an abortion. If you're a pregnant woman that has an abortion, you can face the death penalty. For example, I mean that would be the level that would be at.
Could you imagine if the pro-life movement took it to the place where they were killing mothers or for having abortions?
But you talk to Seamus. Even he's very pro-life. He wants a national ban, and even he doesn't want to go there.
Right.
He views it more as the doctors shouldn't be allowed to perform these things. He's not going to penalize the mothers who are, in these positions or whatever.
What really bothers me is the idea that a state would prosecute someone for something they did outside of the jurisdiction. I don't understand
that. Bothers me the most out of all of this. And I mean, we could talk about my concerns about how a war on abortion is just as successful as the war on drugs, war on terror, war on poverty, everything else. What happens when you get government involved as a regulatory body on something like pregnancy and the harm that comes from that? But just inside of this, the biggest thing I'm concerned of on a broader scale is the idea of, oh, you did that over there? Yeah, no, don't ever come back or we'll arrest you. Like that. I mean, take that to its logical conclusion.
It doesn't sound. Are there any other instances in the United States?
I don't believe that would be held up. There may be some rule, but as far as I can think, I can't think of an instance where because I mean, you take that to its logical conclusion. It's not just within the U.S. That could mean someone that goes to the Netherlands and tries ketamine or tries cannabis or something, and then comes back to a state where it's illegal, gets arrested because they put it on social media that they did it. And then you could even get more obscure with things that like violate a bylaw in your county, but they don't violate a bylaw where you were. The enforcement mechanism there would be horrific, and it needs to be, if there's going to be a semblance of rule of law, it's the jurisdiction you are under. Those are the rules that you are under, not the crimes you committed and then come back, or the things you did there that were perfectly fine and legal, but then you come back home or wherever you reside and now it's illegal there, so now you're going to be charged for a crime. I mean, imagine, it's hard enough to figure out what's illegal in a given place where you are, to try to figure out what's illegal any place you would then go after that. Yeah, that I can't see that being held up. Then that would be a major problem. And like Tim said, we don't even know if Texas has that, but there are other states that have tried implementing that for abortion and some of these other things. And it's politicians, honestly, virtue signaling to their base. Not only can't they do it here, they can't do it anywhere. Well, that's probably not going to be held up. And would you want that to be held up? Like, would you want the government to tell you what you can and can't do when you aren't even under their jurisdiction? I certainly wouldn't.
No, not at all.
Ian, I know you said abortion is not murder from the legal standpoint of the word, but then what do you make of murdering a pregnant woman being considered double homicide?
Oh, it's homicide. It's just not murder. Homicide is the killing of a human. Murder is the illegal. I don't know. They're different definitions. So, like, murder is a form of homicide.
Okay.
Right,
I don't know if the abortion bans are considering abortion homicide, though.
They're not. In Louisiana, I think they tried to codify that, and then it got bumped right back.
No one wants to do that. Yeah, no one wants to touch that. Yeah.
Mary's point was in I think Scott Peterson. I think Seamus brought that up. I don't know if it's Peterson case.
Yes. Yeah.
When
he got charged with double homicide because he killed Lacey Peterson and their unborn child.
Right. So there are jurisdictions where if a woman is pregnant, you punch her in the stomach, you can get charged with murder.
Yep.
Actual murder.
Yeah. Actual, like,
if the mother survives
or manslaughter.
But
you kill the baby.
She miscarries.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, just to clarify, you can get charged with murdering the baby if you punch her in the gut, right?
Murder, manslaughter. It depends on. Right. I believe it's state by state, because I know in California, and a lot of people thought how ironic California, which is when it comes to abortion the most liberal on that subject. But when Scott Peterson killed Lacey Peterson and her child, he was charged with double homicide, with double murder.
Very strange for California. They're like, no. He did kill her, but the rest was a clump of cells.
It comes down to the argument that, well, it all depends on the mother's intent because she wanted to keep the unborn child. No, I didn't say it made sense.
This is it.
I didn't say it was consistent.
The age of the will, where your will equates to the truth of the matter.
Yeah, no, if it comes down to, if a state, because really it comes down to personhood, right? Like if a state has decided that personhood doesn't begin until birth or some point after conception, and this fetus, unborn child, whatever you want to call it, hasn't reached that point of personhood yet, well, then that would mean whether it was through an abortion or through someone killing the mother or attacking the mother and the fetus, unborn person dies, it would either always be homicide or a crime, or it would always not be that because that thing doesn't have personhood.
Yeah, I would think there's a value to the intricacy of killing an unborn fetus that maybe isn't considered a person, that's different than just destroying a cell block, but also maybe not as horrific as like a murder charge.
Yeah, it's some kind of a crime was committed, but not necessarily murder. If you're going the route of saying that it doesn't have personhood yet.
Check this out. I just Google searched this. The Unborn Victims of Violence Act.
Yes.
Is a United States law that recognizes an embryo or fetus in utero as a legal victim if they are injured or killed during the commission of any of over 60 listed federal crimes of violence. Yep. The law defines child in utero as a member of the species of Homo sapiens at any stage of development. The law is codified in two sections of U.S. Code. blah, blah, blah. The law applies only to certain offenses over which the U.S. government has jurisdiction, including certain crimes committed on federal properties, against certain federal officials and employees, and by members of the military. In addition, it covers certain crimes that are defined by statute as federal offenses wherever they occur. So, look, to put it simply, if you kill an unborn baby, since 2004, it has been considered a crime, and the embryo is a legal victim.
A person, too, according to what you were saying there.
Right.
What's the name of that again?
The Unborn Victims of Violence Act.
Yeah, that was the Bush administration and the GOP Congress's kind of foot in the door of normalizing the idea of like, this is an unborn child. It's also a victim for future reference as, and this is also why abortion should be banned or restricted or whatever.
So this was Bush's way of signaling that the unborn fetus is a person.
Not just signaling, but actually creating the legal mechanism to build upon in the future. The camel's nose under the tent, and a few years later, you got a full camel in your tent. The purpose behind that, as Tim noted, that's for federal offenses or for federal personnel, like military personnel or whatever. So like if it's outside of federal jurisdiction, that doesn't apply. So the whole purpose of that, even though it's very limited when it could ever be used, the whole purpose of that, yes, was to signal to the base, but also to create that infrastructure or that legal mechanism to make future build-upons in the future.
Well, this would mean that in Washington, D.C., for instance, if you committed one of these listed crimes against a pregnant woman resulting in the death of the fetus, then you're
charged with this. Yeah, exactly.
But I guess what is the charge? Is it feticide? Is it homicide? Is it murder, manslaughter? How do they handle it?
That I don't know.
I guess if it's a legal victim and considered a person, it would just be homicide.
Or whatever they did to it, like basically whatever you did to the fetus,
right? They call it murder.
Had you done it to a post-born person, whatever, it's the same crime.
It's murder. The title of the bill is an act to amend Title 18 U.S. Code and the Uniform Code of Military Justice to protect unborn children from assault and murder and for other purposes. So quite literally, they refer to it as murder.
Yeah, if it was killed, it would be murder or
right
manslaughter
now,
or whatever.
Abortion's not part of this. It's an exception is abortion. But I could imagine this argument happening where they're like, well, abortion should be considered part of the Unborn Victims of Violence Act. So we got to be real careful that they don't start interweaving these without people understanding what's happening. Because if a mother goes in for an abortion and then gets charged with murder because of some stupid law, that's going to just unravel the fabric of society. We've got to not start punishing women for...
This is, I believe, a gray area right now because the Roe v. Wade decision, they decided, they sidestepped the question of, is this a Ninth Amendment issue where abortion is an unenumerated right, or is it a 10th Amendment issue where this was never covered under the Constitution and therefore it should be left to the states or the people? Instead, they sidestepped and said, well, it's a question of privacy. It's a violation of privacy. Right. And so in overturning this, the current Supreme Court said not only it's not a privacy issue, they said it's also not a Ninth Amendment issue, but they said it's a 10th Amendment issue, meaning it should be left to the states. Correct. So at least as it was decided, it did not sound like they had an appetite for a federal ban on abortion.
The fascinating thing to me in all of this, there was a tweet from a personality I saw on Twitter who was wondering why. He said something like, name any medical procedure where you have no right to privacy. Why isn't this a thing, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, did you read Roe? Because I don't think any of these people actually know what the point of Roe was or the decision, one of which was stated by the Supreme Court. The fetus itself is a living being with a right to privacy. Therefore, the question of an abortion is not about a single person, but about two persons, which is why we ended up with the trimester ruling. Was like, basically they said, okay, in the first trimester, you can get an abortion, but afterwards, now you have to consider the person's life, which is the baby. And then with Casey, they said it's viability, it's not trimester.
Yeah.
I don't think any of these people realize that. They keep saying things like my body, my choice. And you're like, read Roe. They're specifically saying at a certain point, you have to recognize there are two bodies here. Yeah. They don't even recognize that. In the federal law, they actually have a photo here on the Wikipedia page of a woman named Tracy Marciniak holding the body of her son. She was seriously injured in an assault during the ninth month of her pregnancy. So that's what I often say. Like, I don't understand why there is a legal distinction between two babies of the exact same amount of time since conception, but one has been removed from the womb and one hasn't. Why is there a legal protection for one but not the other? I don't understand any logical or moral statement.
Mostly because the woman still has the protection. The protection's like deferred to the mother if the baby's in the womb.
But that still doesn't fly. Like if a mother was shielding her baby from your assault and you ended up hurting her hands and killing the baby, you still committed homicide against the baby.
If a pregnant woman goes and kills someone, you don't charge the baby with accomplice to murder.
No.
But it's a second person that was there, and going through all the motions with them.
What?
Like it's an argument that the baby's not able
Wait, I'm
to.
not following.
The baby's not able to make choices at that stage, so you can't treat it like it.
But why would you? Like kidnapping someone while you commit crimes, we don't say that the kidnapped victim is responsible for the crime.
Yeah, so there's
bringing your child to a bank robbery, we don't hold the child responsible for you
happen
bringing
to
him there.
be occupying the same physical space.
There's two parallel debates here. One is the personhood debate. When does this cease to be a clump of cells, and when does it become a full-fledged person that has the same legal and moral and ethical protections that anyone else would have? A secondary debate is even if it has personhood at some point before birth, which I think it's hard to argue that there's some magic moment passing through the womb, like, oh, now it's magically a person. But the secondary debate there becomes, at what point, if ever, does one human life have the right to the connection to another human life for its subsistence? And so that has been an argument that, the mother, and that's why it comes down to what the mother wanted or intended or decided, is the idea, well, that the mother shouldn't have to be, should the mother have to be, tied to and be providing, subsistence to and risking, her life and health for a second person, even if it is an actual, recognized person. Does that go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say this is where it gets interesting, because if you look at polling across the board over the past several decades, most people, you'll see the left will be like 80% of people are pro-choice. And I'm like, yeah, but they also really resent and reject elective abortion. Because the average person, when you're asking them about abortion, they imagine this woman who's crying and being like, I have no choice. I need to make the right decision for my life and my family, and I wish it wasn't this way. But instead, you have like 93% of abortions are elective, no reason given. Many women use it as a form of contraception. Most people don't like that. So when you look at, I actually went through tons of data, all these different polls, all these different institutions, because I'm like, okay, they're saying, I can't believe that most people in this country are just like totally fine with abortion as contraception. And people keep saying they do. And it's like, when you actually look at the questions asked, you realize, actually, they're not okay with elective abortion. And they're very much in line with, I think, how Oklahoma's been handling it, meaning abortion is legal in any legitimate circumstance. And legitimate being a very, very narrow band of acceptable causes for why abortion can happen.
Yeah.
And most people, I think it's more than 2/3, around 70, say abortion should only happen with a legitimate reason. Yeah. And I'm like, that's actually very restrictive. That would get rid of 93% of abortions. You're not hearing that when it comes to what the left is actually arguing when they're talking about this. So I bring that up because you mentioned the woman is providing her body to the child. And this is an important distinction. In the issue of rape and incest, I think you have a very, very difficult position. But in this instance, especially, I think women have a right to abortion, particularly because if you're going to make the argument that women made irresponsible choices and then got pregnant.
Rape's not an irresponsible choice. You were
right. It's victimhood.
Yeah.
And so here's the challenge, because I've argued with this with Seamus. If a woman says, I'm going to go party tonight, I don't need protection, and then gets pregnant, then someone makes the point, the government can't mandate she provide her body to another being. It's like, well, hold on. She made the choice to provide her body to that being now wants to rescind it.
Yeah.
It's not that she made the choice specifically thinking it would happen, but she engaged in the behavior which results in that it happened, and now there's a being dependent upon her. So it's like, if you agree to a medical procedure that would provide a direct link to another person's blood, and then after 2 weeks said, I want to shut this down, they'd be like, well, now you'd be killing the person.
Yep.
It's a different story as opposed to someone forcefully jammed, you fused your body with someone else, human centipede style.
Right.
Then I'd be like, you had no right to do that and you can't hold it against
them. But the incest thing isn't victimhood either. Incest is a consensual.
I disagree.
Well, there could be rape involved in an incest situation, but if a brother and a sister decide to have a baby together, I don't understand how that would be different than having like a child with some sort of deformity in the womb.
I do understand your point, and I think there is an important moral distinction to be made that individuals can choose to engage in that behavior. But I also think incest has a special space in that it results in serious problems.
It can in inbreeding, they would call it. Yeah. But like so can like
that's why it's illegal. Just actually,
yeah. But so can any kind of deform. Like if you find out at 3 weeks or 7 weeks that the child has like a brain deformity or something, then it's basically like an incest gone wrong.
Right. But also, I mean, when they say the reason they say rape and incest is very often incest is rape. It is rape within the family. Like the power dynamics alone of a father having sex with and impregnating a daughter, that's rape. Like, I mean, there's, that's not, it would be very hard to argue, especially if you got a very young daughter or something like that.
Statutory rape.
Yeah. And not just statutory, but also from the standpoint of like, this is a child, like it's pedophilia or hebephilia or whatever you want to call it. So it is also an act of sexual assault or rape, in addition to the fact that they're related.
That's because the child can't consent. The idea is legally a child until they're 18 cannot consent, so it's a form of rape. But if they call it statutory, it's not actual.
You're making the distinction of like two consenting adult cousins,
two consenting adult siblings that get pregnant. Should they just be able to go get the baby aborted at 5 months?
I mean, it's a good point because we certainly are not okay with the idea of eugenics-based abortion, where it's like, I don't like the baby I'm told the baby will not be well, therefore get rid of it. Because if the incest is the same argument, then.
Yeah.
But I want to point something out because I saw a meme, and it's the two arms coming together with like two distinct ideas and then coming together over one. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about. Yeah.
And it said slavery and abortion, and then together it said denying personhood rights. And I was like, that's really funny because it's Democrats that are denying personhood today. And then I was going to make a joke. I was like, you know who else denied personhood rights? And I was going to put the Confederates. And then I was like, wait, those were the Democrats too.
Yeah, no,
it's literally just the Democrats.
Yeah. I want to tell you, I mean, I don't know how much longer you wanted to talk about this, so I do want to get this in. I actually personally consider myself pro-life. I think that abortions are more often than not gruesome and regrettable things. The reason that I really do not like the idea of government getting involved in this is because if you look at how government handles things, they never just handle this. They, by their very nature, there's mission creep, and they just keep getting more and more and more involved. If they take the turn of saying, this is a constitutionally protected person inside of your body, and we have to make sure this person is not killed, that doesn't end there. It is also, we need to make sure you're taking care of this person. And if we're making sure you're taking care of this person, we need to make sure that you're getting regular inspections. And if there's a miscarriage, we're going to have to investigate that. And you know what? You're going to need to be taking, keep your vitamin levels at a certain level and keep your BMI below a certain level. This inevitably, if you look at the history of how government ends up regulating things, this will inevitably at some point, especially once the progressives decide that they've lost this battle and they're just going to fight it on the other side, it will lead to pregnancy licensing. If that sounds insane, by the way, for anyone who thinks that sounds insane, go back 100 years and tell someone all the things they have to have a license to do right now. And now go forward 10, 20 years and tell someone that you could have an unlicensed pregnancy and look at the look of horror on their face. And whenever something has to be licensed or regulated, here come the rent-seeking crony lobbyists who want to make sure that their prenatal vitamin is mandated. So now what used to be $8 a month is now $500 a month. And who knows if your insurance is going to cover it. And you're going to end up inevitably in a situation, because illegal abortions will always be available, there will always be a black market for it, where poor women who are unable to afford a legal, regulated pregnancy end up getting an illegal abortion, who would have otherwise kept the child because they can't afford the burden of getting a legal pregnancy, and it's way easier to hide an illegal abortion than an illegal pregnancy.
I think that's a ridiculous notion that anyone's miscarriage would be investigated in the circumstance that, abortion would be federally banned or...
But then anyone could just say they miscarried instead of had an abortion.
Well, Roe v. Wade was the start of the government encroaching upon women's bodies. Like what do you mean by that? That's the new precedent. They shouldn't have gotten involved in the first place.
Well, the involvement was saying whether or not they could do it. That was the beginning
of their regulating pregnancy and.
So just read that one. U.S. women are being jailed for having miscarriages. Now, it could be wrong.
Yeah, I want to hear the full story.
It could be wrong, right?
Yeah.
They say a 21-year-old Native American woman from Oklahoma was convicted of manslaughter after having a miscarriage. People were outraged, but she was not alone. They say she was sentenced to 4 years in prison for the first-degree manslaughter of her unborn son.
Was she doing drugs?
Maybe.
That's what I've seen a couple cases like this, and I was like, "What the heck?"
The
is this
examiner did
story?
not determine the cause of death, noting genetic anomaly, placenta abruption, or maternal methamphetamine use could have been contributing factors. So it was the drug use.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it led to an investigation. And the problem is, if you've criminalized abortion, then the easy loophole, if they're not actively investigating miscarriages, is to just say, oopsie, got a miscarriage, right? And so that can trigger. I mean, it's not like every single time they're going to, have someone and they're going to be drilling them and putting the lights on them and all of that. But at the very least, there has to be some follow-up by law enforcement to make sure this was a legitimate miscarriage. And now imagine being a woman who's just had a miscarriage.
I don't think that
They
that
have
is
to.
inevitable.
But they would
Do you
have
think
to.
that before 1973, every woman who had a miscarriage was getting investigated?
No, actually,
it?
before 1973 and really before the restrictions that started a few decades prior, abortion was actually something that was largely unregulated in the U.S. So it wasn't really coming into the late 19th and early 20th century was actually when you saw the ban starting. I will tell you, I mean, if you take it to its logical conclusion, because otherwise, if that's not the case, then really there is no effective ban on abortion. They can just all say
Well,
they miscarried.
The reason you might have seen bans on abortion starting in the early 20th century is that's when contraception was taking off. But that's a whole other.
Oh yeah. No, I mean,
discussion.
there were reasons for that, and the only point I'm making is that we haven't seen this exist long enough to see the logical conclusion of what happens when government gets their hooks into something.
Government tends to screw things up.
That's what
Yeah,
concerns me about the Roe v. Wade overturn is that now instead of one government involved in the regulation, there's 50 governments regulating it.
I don't know, but that's kind of a good thing.
I don't know, man.
Because
I don't want the governments involved.
Decentralization is better than centralization.
In general, it is.
Sometimes.
I mean, if you argue, decentralization should go to the individual, right? Ideally. So if you're arguing that this is a women's rights thing, then the obvious argument is that it goes back to the individual. If you're arguing that there should be some regulation of this, then the argument would be that it should be handled at the state level. I'm kind of transcending all of that and saying, I really just, the idea of government getting involved in something like this, the war on drugs, more drugs, empowering of cartels, the criminalization of otherwise peaceful human behavior, the militarization of the police, no knock raids, all of this came from trying to regulate the use of a substance. And if you get them now involved in pregnancy, then I'm very concerned where that's going to lead. Not immediately, but years, decades down the road, what that leads to. Especially once progressives say, "Hey, you know what? Screw it. We'll just regulate the hell out of it then."
I hear you on government involvement. The way I have to describe it is that people recognize a problem and say, "Let's do a government program to fix it."
Yes.
So you have a wound on your arm and you slap a Band-Aid on it.
Yep.
A few months later, they say, "Ooh, that wound is looking festery and stinky.
Yep.
Let's put another Band-Aid on it."
Yep.
And they keep stacking up bandages on a festering gangrenous wound they never solve.
Yep.
But that being said, the problem's cultural.
It is very much cultural.
One of the reasons we didn't have the issue with abortion pre-1973 that we do today, or would, is because of very different culture. Today, it's like, shout your abortion. Abortion at 9 months. You get an abortion and you get an abortion. Lena Dunham coming out saying she wished she had one.
Oof.
Even like,
But she didn't.
But she didn't get pregnant. She was saying she wished she just got pregnant so she could have an abortion. She was like, all these women talk about it and I want to talk about it too. And it's like, that's messed up.
That's
It's
a take.
complete
Wow.
psyop that anyone would think. So I had to say psyop that anyone is favorable to that. I think most people feel rather lukewarm or have mixed feelings about abortion.
No, not the zombies, dude. Michelle Wolf did a whole bit where she was like, you get an abortion, yay! And they're all cheering
Well, yeah,
for
but
it.
the masses, not the talking
Oh,
heads.
for sure. Right. I see what you're saying, a psyop.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what I was saying. Most people, when you look at the polls, are like, we think abortion should only be allowed with legitimate reasons. And like that eliminates 93% of abortion.
It's a much more nuanced take than either side wants to say. There's not this large plurality that's like, yes, even if you've been raped, you have to carry the child. Nor is this necessarily large plurality that's like, yeah, all the way up to the very moment of birth, we're cool with it. But like you said, it's a cultural issue. It's also an economic issue. Like if you look at the surveys that have been done of women that get abortions, it's largely for economic reasons. A lot of them are already mothers who have just made an economic decision. Well, that's a problem that can be solved in an economic thing. I wish
most
a
of
lot
it
more,
is no reason given.
well, but of reasons that are given, economics is the
Right.
main one. And so the point of that is that, I think that I wish that there was more focus put on addressing the concerns and reasons why women get abortions, getting rid of some of these ridiculous restrictions on adoption, which, by the way, pro-lifers agree with. I hate watching pro-choicers or pro-abortion, whatever you want to call them, on Twitter and on Facebook going, well, if these pro-lifers really cared, they'd want to loosen the restrictions on adoption. Well, yeah, pro-lifers actually do want that. Like they definitely want that. They want adoption to be easier. It's
Amy Coney Barrett's got
ridiculous.
2 adopted kids?
Yeah, no, they absolutely want that. So that's a common point that we could all agree on.
Let's jump to some domestic issues. We'll get off the abortion stuff for a bit. We got this story from Jalopnik. I love using leftist sources for this stuff. Biden warns Americans gas prices will remain high as long as it takes.
Beatings will continue.
Yes, right. The president said gas prices will stay high to combat Putin and Russia's war on Ukraine. I love it. He's basically saying, don't vote for me.
I think it sounds like more of a threat than a warning. Biden threatens Americans. Gas prices will remain high as long as it takes.
You want Ukraine to win or not? Now pay up.
Yeah. It's amazing. So at a time when the Democrats are desperate to find someone to run in 2024 because they don't think Joe Biden's going to make it, Joe Biden's giving them all of the reason to try and find someone else to run in 2024.
Here I like the theory that there have been people that have said that he keeps giving calls for help, that he doesn't really want to be doing this, and that he's like, they won't just let me go eat ice cream, and he'll come at different candid moments where he'll be like, they told me to come out here and say this, so I guess I have to say that. This might be him just please, don't.
No.
I don't want to. Yeah, everyone's gonna have to pay higher gas prices. Will you finally just replace me? Can I go sit down somewhere?
Yeah, this is a blatant honesty. I mean, the whole as long as it takes things is political propaganda,
yes.
But he's basically acknowledging that it's not going to come back down.
Yeah, if you remove as long as it takes, this is an axiom. This is as long as the policies that are in place the gas prices will remain high. And it's crazy because it was, I believe, earlier this month that Biden did correctly acknowledge that right now the biggest bottleneck, at least in the U.S. when it comes to domestic gas production, is at the refinery level. But then he blamed the refiners and said, "Oh, you're not producing enough, and you're profiting. You're price gouging us." And then the refiners came out and said, we're at 96, 98% capacity. If you right now lessen some of the environmental restrictions and regulations on us, we could increase capacity by double digits. And if at the same time you allowed us to build some new refineries for the first time in decades, while simultaneously reducing some of these tariffs on the materials that we need to build the refineries, we could short-term fix it with reduction of regulations and long-term fix it by building more refineries. But, he'd rather say hashtag Putin price hike.
Joe Biden said, when he was campaigning, he's going to transition us off of fossil fuels. Imagine hearing him tell you that, voting for him, and then coming out and being like, Joe Biden doesn't control the price of gas.
Yeah.
Dude, he told you he was going to do this.
It's like that Pikachu face meme where it's like, I'm going to make gas prices go up. Okay, gas prices go up.
How did this happen? And you try and explain to them all of the reasons, some of which are BS. They're like, it's corporate profits. That explains everything.
Yes, suddenly, yeah.
And I'm like, okay, break down for me the corporate profits thing. And they're like, what do you mean? Explain to me how much money they make. They're like, I don't know. I just saw a meme on Facebook. And I'm like, if inflation is through the roof, and the cost to produce oil has gone up, and the cost to drill for oil has gone up, that means their profits will increase to the same percentage point. So I'll put it simply. If you make $100 in profit and it costs you $75 to produce the oil, that's a 25% profit. If the costs increase by 25% and then you increase the cost of fuel as you sell it by 25%, it will also look like your profits went up 25%, but you retained the same level of buying power.
Yep.
These people don't understand that.
No.
So sure, maybe you can say, but they're still getting lots of profits. That is true. They are still making billions of dollars. But it's also absurd to be like, well, they should sacrifice their profits for the sake of Joe Biden's energy policy. No, look, I'll be fair and say, yeah, they probably should work alongside with the government to lower prices. But we still can point out Joe Biden enacted a bunch of policies specifically to transition us off of fossil fuels.
But to be, well, and exactly, I mean, he said, I'm going to do this. And everyone's like, okay, good. But now what they didn't realize is transition isn't like rainbows and unicorns. Transition means make this prohibitively expensive so you have to do this. That's what a transition that's forced by government looks like, as opposed to a market-driven transition where it is unicorns, where it is look at this new thing that's way better, as opposed to we're going to make this thing way worse in comparison.
You see these flight cancellations?
Yes.
You see this stuff?
Oh, I don't just see them.
I've heard about them.
I have been the victim of them, yes.
We've been too. Like they abruptly will change someone's ticket.
Yeah.
cancel their flight.
Or change it, right? Didn't we have it like they just moved someone's flight to the next day or something?
No, that was them doing it. Yeah, they emailed me and they're like, "Oh yeah, he changed that. He just didn't tell me."
Oh,
Like,
okay,
that's fine.
That
That's
freaked
different.
me out.
Yeah.
No, but there are stories in the press where people are saying
That's
that
happened to me.
Yeah.
that they just changed your flight to a later date or something.
I have gotten on an airplane, gotten a notification that the flight had been canceled.
What?
And then just start getting up because I realized they're about to announce it to everyone else too. And they've done that before. Yeah. And we ended up having to stay. That was at Charlotte Airport. We ended up having to stay the night there. And like, I'm looking at it, I'm like, no, we're on the plane. And I look and the door's open. I'm like,
be right.
we're getting off the plane.
It's
And we
coming.
did. And sure enough, like as I'm getting off the plane, they're like, everyone, we have an update. And I'm like, yeah, the update is this flight is canceled. See you tomorrow
Why
morning.
was it canceled?
They said it was because of, what did they say? They always say maintenance. And that's because of
Right.
some kind of thing with the flight insurance.
Right.
They don't have to pay as much out or something like that. But the reality is, I talked to one of the pilots as we were leaving and they're like, yeah, we already went over our hours. And they thought that these other pilots coming in would be able to do it, but they went over their hours too.
I talked to a pilot and he said most pilots are hitting their limit.
Yep.
And so they're just, so my question though is how? Where did all the pilots go? Like
They quit
were
during the
furloughed.
vaccine mandates. They were like, well,
Yeah.
I'm not getting the jab. I'm out.
and they,
Furloughed and vaccine mandates. That's what happened.
and we were told the media was like, they're not protesting vaccine mandates. Everything's fine. Yeah, a bunch will
Yeah.
probably quit. I like the idea that everybody got raptured better because it sounds more fun. Because we
the
went,
good
They just kept
pilots went to
flying
heaven.
higher and
Yeah,
higher.
it
Yeah.
was
Well,
the,
so-
the good pilots went to heaven. We're all in hell.
we,
now. Yeah.
I've been thinking about this because why are there shortages everywhere? Where are people? Why aren't people working?
Yeah.
It's not even, maybe it's the vaccine mandates. And that could be really it, that most people just said, I'm out, I'm not doing it. And now, but where are those people? I mean, they got to eat, right?
Black market.
But what are they doing? They got to make money doing
Gig-
something, but they're
gig
still not here.
economy. Yeah.
So we went to the movies over Labor, I think it was Labor Day, and there's nobody anywhere. And I'm just like, where are the humans? Where are the humans? So the fun conspiracy theory, it's not really a conspiracy, but the fun joke theory is that the rapture happened. And all of the people that got raptured, our memories of them was erased. So now we're just sitting here wondering why all of the stores have labor shortages, why there's no pilots anymore. They're all gone, and we just can't remember who they were.
Oh, good. So I have a new nightmare. That's
Nice.
thank you for that.
then-
that's good. No, that's
And
good.
then
sleep on that
Seamus was
tonight.
like, that can't be true. Because Seamus is Catholic, right?
Yes.
He would have to be raptured too. And I'm like, I don't know.
Ah,
What does it
someone
say?
found out they were wrong. Yeah.
I know, right?
Yeah. No, but in all seriousness, though, something doesn't make sense.
I think
Right.
they're at home collecting unemployment.
But
if they're
not for this
lucky.
long.
Not for this.
They were
long,
canceling
They
flights
were.
last year.
They were, yeah.
You're not going to be on unemployment for 2 years. I mean, we're going on a year.
What is it, 18 months? Is that the long?
They did extend it.
So there is actually an explanation for this. When you pump trillions of dollars into the economy and artificially create demand while simultaneously paying people to do nothing, you create a bunch of consumers and reduce the number of producers. And we're watching that play out in real time. The way that corrects is through a massive recession, which is coming. If it hasn't already started, it's coming. And it is the reality of when, and this, by the way, anyone who's still out there promoting modern monetary theory or UBI or any of that nonsense, this was a couple times of them handing off checks and expanding unemployment insurance by a little bit. And look at what it led to. It led to such a disruption in the market that everyone became net consumers and stopped producing. And the ripple effects of that will be felt for years.
Should I take out a bunch of loans right now, is what you're saying?
Yes, you should take out loans, credit card debt,
financial
anything
advice.
you have a title for, go to the title loan place. This is the time to buy. You got to buy in. This is
So the idea is if the recession's coming and the value of the dollar is going to tank, then the buying, so like a car that's worth 20 grand today is going to be worth 40 grand in a year.
Yeah.
You take out a loan for a $20,000 car and in a year you sell it for 40 grand, you pay off the loan, you got a free 20 grand.
I mean, that's some brave pool you're playing there, but yeah, I mean,
Well, what I mean to
Some
say
rich
is,
guy's game.
right? No. That's what rich people do.
That is what we're
no,
saying.
that is what rich people do. But except they do it on your back, right? They do it with Fed money that just got
Exactly.
freshly printed, and if
Yeah.
everything goes south, and they're too big to fail.
This is the point I'm making. Right before the recession, they know that if they borrow $100,000 and then the buying power of that $100,000 collapses,
Yep.
they basically got a freebie. Now they can sell whatever they bought because the price will spike.
Yep.
The value of the dollar goes down, so you'll need twice as many dollars to buy it, so they'll get the free money.
Yep.
Half the buying power with none of the work.
I can imagine that breaks down at some point. What's the inevitable conclusion of that Ponzi scheme?
it just keeps getting worse. That's what we have right now. So like you look at the difference between the 2007, 2008, the housing price bubble that then crashed and then caused the whole ripple effect to the recession, which then led to the whole concept of too big to fail and the TARP bailouts. Add a zero to that. And that's what we're facing. This is a whole, this is an exponential, this is a whole order of magnitude higher of what we're facing now. Like we're literally, instead of hundreds of billions and trillions, we're now talking trillions and tens of trillions. And it's hard to quantify what the ripple effects are going to be, and they just keep feeding into it. And that's why you see this they talk about yes 40 yes
I love this
40% of all the money that has ever been made has been made in the last 2 years.
Oof.
This is also
to be fair,
savings. Yeah, you can explain that.
This spike is when they said your savings account is now a checking account.
Right.
So they
Yes.
put savings in a circulation.
Right.
Okay.
So, but look at the hockey stick after
It kept-
the fact.
it kept going.
That's the creation of currency.
And I think they did that to
Yeah, no,
mask
it's
that they were about to start printing and get that upper diagonal, that big one, what is it, like a 80-degree angle instead of a 27-degree
90.
angle? Yeah.
To make it look less severe. Yeah, and I'm glad you pointed that out, because this doesn't look like a 40% increase. This looks like a 600% increase, but it's right. It's the definitional change that happened. Thank you for
So what we got to do is get a graph where we remove the vertical line and just watch it go from the 27-degree angle to the 80-degree angle.
It's still ugly.
Yeah, it's still not good.
And this is only up until 2020, like August of 2020, it looks like. What's going on now?
And what's funny is the fractional reserve policy changed just before COVID.
Yeah, it was like April 2020 or something.
It used to be that you needed a reserve to loan out money, and then they went, we're getting rid of that. You can just loan as much as you want.
Yep.
Infinite
0%
right.
fractional reserve. Imagine playing a game of Monopoly, and all of us are playing by the rules, okay? And every single, I'm going to make you the bad guy here, sorry. All of us are playing by the rules, right? Like, you roll your dice, you go the number of number of spaces, you decide whether you want to buy, hold, whatever, and then when it's Mary's turn, she goes to the banker and says, give me 1 trillion Monopoly notes and stick them all with the bill for it. That's our economy. And the problem is the price of living is going up the same for everyone. But the closer you are to that money supply at its initial printout, at its initial disbursement, the less affected you are by the double-digit price inflation, and the more you're exposed to the triple, quadruple-digit increase overnight of your wealth. And that's what we're seeing here.
Here's another important factor here. Bitcoin dropped, I think, to like 19K or whatever.
Yep.
And everyone's screaming in the media, and they're like, oh. And I'm just like, I don't know, I don't care. I'm ignoring it. And that's the deal. When you have money, you don't care that it went down. You're like, I don't know, what am I going to do with it anyway?
Yeah.
And then after a year, 2 years, 3 years, it starts to recover. So when people see this stuff and they actually need their money and they're seeing it tank and they're like, I can't ignore that, and they're forced to sell it at garbage rates, they become poorer.
Yeah.
Rich people who are more resilient to the change in monetary value and recessions and depressions
Yeah.
can ignore it until the recovery happens and then retain all that value.
Yes.
So the rich get richer, the poor get poorer.
Exactly. I would also like to note that Bitcoin has crashed down to its 2017 high, its previous all-time high before this last increase. There's an old video. I wish they had kept updating it. It's about 7 years old now, but it's called "Don't Buy Bitcoin. It Crashes." And it's this guy going, there was this one time Bitcoin was worth, and I'm making up the numbers, but it's pretty much like this. One time it was worth 0.1 cents, and then it went up to 5 cents, and then it crashed all the way down to 2 cents. And then this other time, it was worth $3.25, and then it went all the way up to $25, and then it crashed all the way down to $7.80. And like he keeps doing this, and he goes, and so the moral of the story is, don't get Bitcoin. It crashes. This is the cycle of parabolic growth, usually some sideways trading, and then a crash down to higher than the previous all-time high.
Yeah.
And now the gaps are obviously not as wide as they used to be. It's a lot easier for something to go from $1 to $10 than to go from 20,000 to 200,000, right? Like there's only so much market cap it can have, but the pattern's still playing out. This is not financial advice, by the way. I'm just a Jew on the internet. I'm not a financial advisor.
But you look at the way the dollar is going, and I don't know how anybody could have faith in their paychecks at this point.
Really?
Yeah, the recession that's headed our way, they're saying there's going to be rolling blackouts. Do you guys see this reporting? No. Rolling blackouts, food shortages, food prices. So it's you know what I'm really proud of In 2020, I started doing the emergency food sponsorships.
Yeah.
And then like Vice made like a hit piece and they were like, haha, what a loser. And then I'm like, man, if you bought that food in 2020, it was, I think, like half the cost of what it is today.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you'd be sitting on food that lasts for 25 years at half the price. You'd be like, oh, wow, it's a good thing I bought it 2 years ago. We're going to last 23 more years.
Yeah.
You buy it today, it's more expensive.
Jim Baker has the last laugh.
Even if you just decided to eat it today, you got your food at half price.
Yep.
So it's crazy because, I was talking about this in 2020, 2021, food shortages are coming. What happens? Putin's price hike. Whether or not you believe any of that stuff, the fact is
It came.
There is a shortage of wheat, which is going to it's going to be mind-bogglingly devastating.
Yep.
Not as much to us, but Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, all these Middle Eastern countries, Turkey, these countries that get much of their grain and food from Russia and Ukraine, they ain't going to be getting it. No. So what are they going to do? They're going to be very, very hungry and very angry, and we are going to be watching. We're going to be sitting there, and we're going to be like, haha, remember when we used to watch CNN when they were news? No. Well, let's put it on anyway. You'll turn it on, and you'll just see food riots, water and food riots.
Yep.
And we'll have some of that here. During the pandemic, remember those lines of cars for miles waiting for food because people didn't have any? If you think it's bad now, if you think it was bad back then, right now there's nobody producing.
Yeah.
So not only do we have a fertilizer shortage, which led to predictions of a crop yield dropping by 40%, diesel potential shortage, meaning farmers won't even be able to harvest. And if they do, it'll be substantially more expensive to harvest, and there will be substantially less food, meaning for more than one reason, the cost of food is going to skyrocket.
Yeah. It's almost sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was going to say, and then people are going to, that's when people break down and go crazy.
Yeah, it's almost as if massively expanding the monetary supply and then just handing it out leads to a massive increase in prices because you have much more money chasing the same amount of goods and services, and then that same amount of goods and services actually goes down because people say, I got all this money, I don't need to work, and so now you've got the disruptions from that. It's a perfect storm for what we're experiencing.
You know what we need? Seeing this problem happening.
Yes.
We need to figure out a way to start over. Some kind of like a reset, but a bigger one.
A great one.
Yeah.
A great
Great
reset.
Yeah, like a really big.
Make resets great again.
Yeah, like a great reset.
Yeah.
And then maybe when the people are going to lose everything they own in this, but we need this great reset.
Yeah.
And then after that, they may own nothing, but they will be happy.
They'll be happy.
They'll be happy.
Yeah, that
be
sounds
happy.
pretty good.
So it makes you wonder.
You said it was great. That you sold me at great, honestly.
Yeah, if it's called great, then it must be.
But it makes
be.
you. But listen. It makes you wonder when they advocate for the Great Reset, literally, like calling it that.
Yeah.
And then they implement these policies that have just destroyed everything.
Yeah.
It's almost like they want it to happen.
I'm looking at the M1 money supply. I'm kind of investigating it right now, and it does show up until May. I'm seeing it up until May of 2022. It's at the 80% increase until about April 2022, and then it looks like it's actually gone down.
Yeah, because that's
slightly a little bit.
Yeah, because the Federal Reserve has started tightening the rates. They've started increasing the rates. The reason that's happening, that is a consequence of banks being able to lend money or get lent money at effectively 0%. Once you factor in for inflation, they're actually getting it at negative interest rate. They can turn around and put it out there to us, to the consumer, at a low interest rate and just make a bunch of free money, basically. It's literal free money. So by raising the rates, and then buy property with it,
and
right?
Then bankrupt people and then seize their assets.
Destroy their lives and walk away holding the bag.
Because people won't be able to pay back the interest on their loans, et cetera, things like that.
Oh, once everything crashes, absolutely. That's all the foreclosures that happened in 2007, 2008.
So we need a law to protect people from foreclosures? Because I imagine BlackRock and other banks are going to try and steal people's houses.
You need to just stop. You need to get, first of all, you need to get currency out of the control of the government. Government is a political entity that tries to implement political goals for political purposes. It should not be in charge of the money supply, because this is what happens when you have a political entity in charge of the money supply. They implement the money supply not for the best use of its consumers, because they're a monopoly. They don't care about the consumers or the people using it. They do it for their political purposes, which in this case is to try to, push along an economy that they don't want to correct, and making things worse in the process, and paying off the cronies who sponsored them into office.
Sure, but you have to recognize some people are just really dumb, right?
Oh, there's that too. Yeah.
And because they're so dumb, you need better men to rule over them.
Strong men.
Strong men.
Strong men for a great reset.
Absolutely.
Why has no one else thought of this?
I know, right?
Yeah,
Like it took us coming together to finally figure out what the problem is.
Haven't you? Did you ever? Don't you remember that speech from Michael Bloomberg when he said tax the poor? He said poor people spend money on dumb things.
Yes.
So we should tax their money so we can choose for them what to buy.
A populist message if there ever was one.
Right. He wanted to tax large drinks because he said poor people are stupid and buy big sugary drinks and get fat.
Yeah.
So let's put a big tax on it so they can't afford it anymore. So they stop doing it.
That
What
worked.
they're doing with
That
gasoline.
works.
So you say get money out of the government or out of politics or what? I don't know. How did you phrase it
Right.
exactly?
So the government needs to stop being involved in what money is, because if you allow the market to determine what money is, now instead of having a political entity openly manipulating the monetary supply for political purposes, right, and destroying the wealth and the well-being of the vast majority of people that are involved in this, instead now you have competing entities who, because they want to be, have their dominant market share, have a vested interest in doing the opposite. They want their money to be deflationary, or at the very least, not have the value go down over time, have the value of the money increase over time, have the case use and the ability to use it go up over time, have it be an effective and better thing. This is what we apply to everything else, right? Like, you don't want to have to buy your car from the government car company, right? Why would you want to have to get your money from the government money company?
The Constitution.
And hold on, sorry, real quick.
Yeah.
You not only would you have to buy your car from the government, but they have a computer chip in it where every year it goes 10 miles an hour slower.
Yeah.
And then you're like,
Literally,
I gotta get a new car because the car's too slow.
Yeah, this is like planned obsolescence for money.
Right.
So
Right.
this is like Federal Reserve Tactics, which is a private company. Obviously, they're in cahoots with they're monopolized by the government. But like, Congress is supposed to be in charge of the monetary supply, according to Congress.
Yeah, so it
according to
should
the
be
Constitution.
amended. Like, no, that's the thing. Like, yes, and by the way, this is why I don't consider myself a constitutionalist. I think the Constitution is a useful way for us to use it defensively to protect our rights. But at any point, there are times in the Constitution where it lays out things that blatantly are bad for us and violate our rights. And this would be an example of that. I don't think that government should be involved in money. They've proven themselves to be a bad steward of it. And even if you replace the Federal Reserve, because I understand what you're saying, they're technically a private entity. If you replace the Federal Reserve instead with...
Oh, you drop something. There you go.
Yes. If you replace the Federal Reserve instead with just a federal bank, it's effectively the same thing, but just with different steps. Like,
You don't need a federal bank. That's what I just handed you.
But we could.
That's the Bank of Columbus $10 bill.
This was a bank note, a private bank note, right? This
And
is
it
what
was
I'm talking
valuable.
about.
I think if it was Congress, we'd be able to audit it, or it would be like part of it being the Congress's bank is that the People's Bank is that we would audit it. It would constantly be all public.
In theory, and could it be better? Yeah, but you still have a centrally planned authority, right? So why not instead allow a market-derived series of notes, or in this case, it's probably going to be more electronic, but you could also have physical notes. There are plenty of people out there that don't want the electronic notes. They want the physical notes.
But look,
why not let the market determine what is best for people?
Because the people who are in power are friends with those who control the policy that enrich them, and why would they ever walk away from that?
That's the correct
Right,
answer.
they collude. Well, no, because people collude and buy up huge amounts of stuff and then sell them off all at once, and then they work the market. And so we need a government to protect us from monopolies.
But that's not what
free
happens.
money from the Fed, and they buy up houses, and then you are a working class family, and you're like, it's time to buy our first house. This house is going for $200,000, and you say, I will pay asking. And they go, great, we'll get back to you. And they call you back and say, we got an offer from BlackRock or whatever that's at $240,000, and you're like, I can't afford that. And they're like, well, sorry. And that's what keeps happening to people.
Yeah. And the thing is, a lot of what the crony, and at this point, it's sort of like a corporatist, fascist extension of government, some of these companies like BlackRock and so forth. The reason they're able to do it is because they get free money that's underwritten by you and by future generations that haven't even been born yet. You reintroduce, and I'm not saying necessarily this, but you reintroduce having the money being determined by the market level. They have to play by the same rules as the rest of us. And yes, they're wealthier, but they're now going to have to deal with the same supply and demand issues. They're not going to be able to just, Bitcoin. They're not going to be able to just print out endless streams of money and have you pay the bill for it, have you pay the debt for it with the interest. And, and then when everything falls apart, they get bailed out, and that's paid for by more money that got printed out. That whole thing goes away when you take away the ability for them to just expand the monetary supply whenever they want to pay off their own.
This is why I like
people
cryptocurrency, and this is why it's frustrating when you get progressives who are acting like crypto's a really, really bad thing. It's just like you're just shilling out for the establishment.
It's literally the way out.
People can create infinite amounts of crypto right now without regulation.
Absolutely,
that's endless inflation, just the same problem. But
only if people value those.
Only if people value exactly. It comes into this is subjective value, right? Like I can make a coin tomorrow based on the Ethereum chain or whatever. I call it Spike Coin, and I go, hey everyone, go get some Spike Coin, and they go, great. What's your case use? What are you fulfilling that isn't already being fulfilled? And I go, Spike Coin. That's not going to work. No one's going to want it. Some people will get it as a joke, but it's not going to go anywhere.
It's and on top of that, I can print a bunch of cards and I can call them Timbucks.
Yeah.
And I can be like, this is paper Timbucks. They're worth so much money. Hey, and people are going to be like, I don't know. If I value it, I value it.
If you value it,
right now, all the people with the Bitcoin and the Ethereum, like there are huge people that own massive amounts of that stuff, would own the market essentially without any government oversight. And then they would buy up all the corn, and then they would raise the price of corn 13 times and then sell it back to the people.
Well, first of all, are there Bitcoin billionaires? Absolutely. But like if you look at like the distribution of that wealth, for lack of a better term, it's far less centralized than you would see, for example, where you have like, what is it, less than 1% of the population that owns 20-30% of everything. Like that's certainly not happening. And with if you took all the crypto bros out there, they're certainly not going to have anywhere near that same market level that exists in this current system, because they can't, because it has to be a system that reflects the actual market demands and supply and demand, as opposed to a political entity, a centrally planned political entity saying, all right, well, you guys helped get me into office, and so, I'm paying you off, and here's however many $1 trillion. I'm going to give you a $600 check. You stay right there. You should make sure to vote for me. And also you're getting the debt for this guy. This all fell apart. Okay, well, we're going to print out more money and bail you out because you're too big to fail. You got to pay for this. You're definitely not too big to fail. That's the system that's built.
That's the worst. The Federal Reserve unauditable system is the worst by far.
Yeah.
But I think that crypto unregulated by the people could get as bad.
There is no utopian system, but the regulation comes in place if suddenly there's a reason for there to be suspicion of how Bitcoin is being used. It's out in the open and people can see it. Or if it's not out in the open, if there's some coin that you can't see the back end of it, you can't see the ledger of it, it is centrally controlled. People are going to say, why would I use this when I can use this that's so much better? That's what happens from the market. It's like using the car analogy. If this car company suddenly is making cars that are absolute garbage, you know it, and you go buy a car somewhere else. You could do this with anything: chicken sandwiches, skateboards, whatever. It doesn't matter. Having more providers makes you more likely to be able to get a better value, and for them to have an incentivization of serving you as the consumer. But when you bypass that through central planning, now they don't have to serve you as the consumer. They only have to serve the political class that they put in office. And that's a much easier thing.
I'm interested in getting Mary. I know you're an expert on fiscal policy and fintech. So what are your thoughts on all this?
I mean, I'm trying to think of the right questions to ask, but
it's very esoteric.
A little bit.
Well, with the wallet, like with crypto wallets, it looks like there's a lot of people that, because everyone has a wallet, but it could be one guy that has 900,000 wallets.
I mean,
this argument doesn't track. Look, I could buy a bunch of rocks, and then I can go around being like, Tim Rocks, they're only mine, and you can't get Tim Rocks from anybody else. So if I buy a bag of gravel, it's true. That bag of gravel is exclusively Tim Rocks.
He could own all that gravel.
I could own them all. And then people are like, we want it. Oh, like, we'll give you bread, we'll give you labor. And I'm like, giving out rocks. That's no difference between that and any token.
Just use Bitcoin as your example. So,
Bitcoin is decentralized. It looks decentralized. I can buy Bitcoin, and then I've actually put money into the system. And then I would not just want to lose the value of that. Yeah, so other people can value it because they know there's a market around it with real value where people are willing to buy and trade.
At some point, farmers are going to be like, we accept crypto. And you'll be like, great, what kind? And they'll choose. We accept Bitcoin. We accept Ethereum. And if you don't have those two cryptos,
then you exchange it for that.
But the value of those are going to skyrocket. Who owns them when they decide it's this proof of stake thing that they want to move towards, away from proof of work? Right. Who's creating the tokens? It's who has the tokens. Those are the ones that get to make the decisions.
The people that have them.
Yeah, those are the ones that are rich right now. They want to move it to a system where the rich people get to make the decisions.
Right. So what could happen right now? What could happen?
I'm not saying it's what we have right now isn't ass. It's terrible.
What could happen is that people build faith in a cryptocurrency that is centralized and controlled by rich, powerful people. That doesn't change the fact that the Fed is bad and we should find an alternate system, and crypto is pretty good.
Yeah, so market-derived systems don't necessarily not allow for the centralization of wealth. But in order to be able to do that, you have to serve the consumer. If it's market-derived and not centrally planned, in order to be able to grow, maintain, and expand wealth, you have to be serving the consumer better than your competitors, especially if you want to expand it. And if you want to maintain it, you have to at least be doing it as well as your competitors. In a system that isn't market derived, in a system that is centrally planned through a centralized monopoly of violence such as government, instead what you have is a system where I don't have to serve you. I just have to be friends. You're the bad guy again. I have to be friends with Mary, the government, who I just so happen to bankroll into office, and friend Mary too, who's on the other side, and make sure that they're my friends and that they give me whatever I want. So now instead of having to do the often mind-numbing labor to make sure that I am serving you and everyone else as best as possible, and where the consumer is king, instead all I have to do is spend a pittance of those resources just keeping them in office, keeping them fat and happy, and then getting them to give me whatever I want. That is inherently a system that feeds everything has to feed a profit motive, right? The profit motive needs to be fed by serving the consumer instead of serving a small handful of the ruling class.
We've got to go to Super Chats. If you haven't already, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and share the show with your friends. Head over to timcast.com. We're going to have that members-only show coming up for you at 11 p.m., but we're going to read what y'all have to say right now. So what we got here? The Snack Lady Jackie says, nice to see Tasha's husband on the show tonight. I vote him for VP with Dave Smith, president, and Michael Malice, press secretary. We need this to happen. Are you intending to be a VP?
I doubt I would run for VP. I honestly don't. I don't know if I'm going to be running for anything in the future. And right now, and part of the reason I started You Are the Power is until we grow this movement massively, we're really talking about who's the next guy to score the margin of error. Like, it doesn't matter until we have a much larger movement. So I haven't ruled anything out for the future. I just don't really care until we've done the movement growing.
Right on. And would you kindly smash that like button? Let's read more.
And hit the bell. Don't just subscribe. Hit the bell. We want your phone to explode with notifications every time these people do
I've never actually told people to hit the bell.
Hit the bell.
Does it work?
Hit the bell.
Everybody who's subscribed or subscribe and then hit the bell.
Hit the bell. Get the notifications. Let it wake you up.
East F says, Spike, keep up the relentless trolling of the ATF.
I do what I can. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you agree, sir, that we should abolish the ATF?
Yes.
The ATF is it's a federal law enforcement agency targeting four legal things?
Alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives. It's actually now the BATFE, but they went back to being the ATF because everyone's like, what the BATFE?
The Bureau
of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Which should be like a convenience store. I know that's like an old trope. That's not my joke. It's like an old trope, but it's true. It's a cliche because it's true. The reality is the government has no business telling you that what you can own, a firearm or otherwise. And you can make the Second Amendment argument of it says very clearly the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. You can also make just the rights argument of if I have a natural right to defend myself. And you can also make the reality of power argument, which is that if a small handful of people have the only effective ability to project violence effectively, no one else has any say in anything.
Right. All right. Warwolf says, with a bunch of crab emojis, Potato Man is gone. No, that's right. The Potato Man bailed on us.
No crab hands.
So now we're stuck with Mary.
Uh,
No, we're excited.
Catholic.
We had to get a
sub in a Catholic.
Yeah. No, but we also we'll have Mary here. We'll have Brett. We'll have Jamie. We'll have a couple people jumping in, and then Luke's on his way back. Right, Luke?
Brett's here.
Brett's here.
Luke even had a problem with it when Seamus was on Pop Culture.
What?
Yeah, he was commenting, "Boo, Potato Man."
It was in the chat.
Yeah, and
Boo, Potato
on
Man.
Instagram too.
People on Twitter think they have like a real beef. They're like, man, these guys really hate each other. Like, no, it's a bit. They're like ribbing.
No, it's not a bit. It's completely serious.
Yes,
you
that's
don't
right.
understand.
Seamus cries after every show.
Every show.
That's why he left.
For him.
Because Luke was trolling him in the chat, so Seamus was like,
shaking.
I'm leaving.
Just like
All
that.
right. What is this? John Kristen says, Seamus talking of caulk and tubs. Tim and Seatown and Ian double-handed mopping has me wonder about what is happening behind the scenes. Oh yeah, when Ian did the double mopping thing.
Yeah.
Double mopping.
Feel the momentum. You actually have to pretend like the mops are in your hands. You know the pressure that you feel, that friction.
Raymond G. MAGA Stanley Jr. says, who's ready for MAGA month?
Woo!
The left may be setting our country a burning, But let's use that fire for barbecues, bonfires, and building community. Go IRL. Ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow begins the first day of MAGA month. Make America Great Again month. I have my Twitter profile picture ready. It is the same face, but I got the American flag behind me. And this is not just a month in which you grill burgers every day or on the weekends whenever you can. It's not just the month where you get the 4th of July to fire off fireworks. The point of MAGA month is to make America great again. You know what that means? It means y'all should be engaging in community building, community service. You should be figuring out ways you can come together with your neighbors, meet people, learn from each other, build those communal bonds to literally make America great again, and audit the Fed or something like that. I don't know.
Hell yeah.
Some political buzz thing.
Nullify the government. Yeah. No, you can't make America great again without nullifying government and building community bonds and
That's
building
the
networks.
purpose
like
of America, is to nullify unjust government.
literal purpose.
MAGA month is not about Trump. It's about making America great again. And that means if you go out and pick up trash, you've made America great again.
Yep.
If you, like Scott Pressler does, if you go out and register people to vote, you are making America great again. It doesn't matter if it's Trump or DeSantis or whatever. The point is, start locally, build community, meet your neighbors, have a barbecue, invite friends over, learn from each other, and build those strong community bonds. And that makes America stronger.
I realized that
and
making
you got
it
an American flag.
Make America great again isn't like take it back to where it was when it was great. It's the idea that you're going to continuously do something to make it great over and over and over again.
And also in doing that, you show people that they don't need. A lot of people, they aren't, socialists or statists or authoritarians or whatever. They veer into those things because they don't see a viable alternative. They're not shown a viable alternative for how they can be. We all want the same things. We want to be safe. We want to be healthy. We want to be happy. We want to be prosperous. And if we can show that by building communal bonds that we can do those things together voluntarily and not needing some centrally planned authority, making some caricature approximation of it that makes everything worse, we can actually reduce their power that is in people's heads of the legitimacy of their bad ideas by showing them a much better alternative, which is us working together.
All right, let's read some more. We got Travis Bost. He says, hey, Spike, Tim, the Libertarian Party of Eastern Panhandle Convention is July 16th. You and your friends are cordially invited. What day is the 16th?
I think it's a Saturday.
The Saturday?
Not sure. Oh, let me check.
Is that in West Virginia?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I am sorry I didn't pass that on to you. You are, in fact, invited to speak. I passed it on to Seamus,
I don't know if
but
I
I
should
didn't give it to
speak.
you. But yeah, so it's over in the Eastern Panhandle. I'll send you the details if you want it.
You said the 16th?
Yeah, what day is that?
It's
I will
Saturday.
unfortunately be at Freedom Fest
Saturday?
in Vegas.
Yeah, it's Saturday.
unfortunately.
Oh, Saturdays we can do Saturday. That'd be fun.
Yeah, it'd be fun,
To
right?
go to a Libertarian
You
Party
should
thing.
go. You should definitely go. They'll
Yeah.
get it down.
Well, let me
Bring the
let me-
porcupine. Whoever
let
brought
me-
the porcupine to the West Virginia convention, bring the porcupine, and Tim will definitely come.
There you
Well,
go.
I don't know. I'm penciling it in. Actually, I
Penciling.
only have a pen, but if I
Lightly
can't,
That's
then I can
permanent. You
scratch.
can't erase that.
He just penned it in. He just
Let me
penned it in.
Pencil that in. No, that actually does sound fun. Where exactly is it going to be? I know it's in
I'll
the
look it up
Eastern
for you.
Panhandle, but we're basically there.
Yeah.
So, are there going to be wings? Because if you got wings,
Chicken wings?
chicken wings.
Bring wings.
Yeah.
Hit
with
the bell, bring
extra
wings.
Bring
ranch.
some eggs, some
Yeah.
farm fresh eggs for
Yeah,
everybody.
Well, I'm not going to fry eggs at a Libertarian.
No,
but
you
you
just
can
bring
bake-
bring the raw eggs.
I heard they had plant-based human meat.
Dude, we got to talk about that maybe on the after show. Did you guys? So they're actually. This is on Twitter. Was it Maji Nawaz tweeted this out that
No.
a vegan burger made to taste like human meat received an award in Cannes. This is
Who
not a
taste
joke.
tested
The
this?
New
Let's talk-
York
we'll-
Post.
We'll
Vegan-
talk about that for the members.
An
show.
award at Cannes.
What the?
I'm not asking. I mean, it does kind of sound like something the Libertarian Party might do. Be like, it's about freedom. If you want to eat people, it's not real people, but you're free to do
If you
so.
want to simulate eating
Cannibalism,
people,
with consent.
simulate crime.
simulate.
I don't know. Like, what if a person consented to being eaten after they died? Like the Libertarian Party. Like,
Oh.
I don't think that's like a modern. The Libertarian Party has been in favor of some weird stuff in the past. Not that. That's why I'm bringing it up. Like when the guy took his pants off, or when they booed some guy.
Yeah, I
saying-
mean, there's taking your pants off, and there's you can eat me after I die, and I
Yeah,
feel like
Well, there's also didn't they? Some guy say? Didn't someone say they shouldn't sell drugs to children? They got booed.
Yeah, Austin Peterson said
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
He
he's
booed.
Heroin to 5-year-olds.
No.
Heroin 5-year-old.
No, there are limits.
oh,
All right. Let's read some more. DC says, Ian, it's a big leap to call Christianity a cult, but your point about targeting the individual over the group is spot on.
Thanks, man. We were talking about it before the show. I think all religions are cults. It's not an insult. It's just an observation.
But then, like, all belief structures are cults, regardless.
I don't know about that. It's the organization of religions that make them cults.
Is it bad to be a cult?
Not necessarily, but you just got to identify the cult behaviors, like some
Believing
cults,
things that aren't real.
Yeah,
like
cults-
like there's this impermeable magnetic field that allows us to communicate and commune with the universe.
That's
not provable. That's nonsense,
If
isn't
I
it?
had people sit around me and repeat after me and say it, then yeah, that would be very culty.
I mean, you could argue if you go that far that anything that has presuppositional beliefs that cannot be challenged is a cult.
And like there are 5 lights. For instance, Picard knows there's 4, but they're like, just say that there are 5. Even though we know that you know it's not real, we want you to say it out loud to acknowledge that you're one of us. And I feel like going to a church and having you repeat stuff like,
No one's
this
forcing you
bread
to
is
do it,
actually is his human body, or a woman was the impregnated by a ghost thing is like, it's not right in front of you, but when you have a piece of bread in front of you and you're made to say that it's a guy's body,
You're not made to.
well, they ask you to repeat it.
And you can walk out
You can, or you can become one of them.
if you want to.
And if you want to become Catholic,
Whereas Picard was tortured and electrocuted.
yeah, that's a different story. In the 1500s, you would get tortured for not.
Not
saying
today,
it.
though. All right, let's see. Let's read some more. Waffle Sensei says, the beloved and empirical. Elon will just reinstate Jordan Peterson. Why would he cave now when it's basically guaranteed he'll be back on?
I think that's the long game. Yeah.
October, I think, was what they're saying. That the
Is that
deal,
what they're saying? Okay.
Yeah, the deal should be closed by October.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't know
the
for
long
sure,
game.
though. That could just be scuttlebutt.
I mean, look at all the scuttlebutt that's gotten us where we are so far with this deal, right? But I mean, that would, if you wanted to play the game of I'd never, bend to anyone's will, even on something that, in and of itself isn't necessarily the hill many would die on. It's the hill I'll die on because I'll die on every hill.
Yeah.
That's kind of his brand, right? Like there isn't a hill I won't die on. And then to have Elon Musk come in and say, well, you're going to be allowed to say that. I mean, what an ultimate victory there. Plus,
Yes.
that coupled with the Daily Wire announcement and everything else is like Jordan Peterson's king of the world at that
Babylon
point.
B coming back at the same time would be huge.
All of that happens.
All right, let's see. Bree Sullivan says, are you serious about Trump banning people? It was reported, I'm not saying it's true because I don't trust these media outlets, that people were getting banned off Truth Social for pushing January 6th reporting. Like they were saying, like, here's what January 6th the committee is saying and doing, and they were getting banned. I kind of feel like I don't trust them when they report that because it's probably, leftists and liberals going on Truth Social and breaking the rules, but including January 6th so they can be like, look what I was banned for. And it's like,
Yeah, like I said, my friend Reed, and I'm not going to repeat it because we're on a YouTube live stream, but we'll put up stuff that should not be violating what they purport to be their terms, but it's like sacred cows on the right, and very quickly gets banned like minutes.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know Truth Social, but knowing him, he's already done it because he did it with all of them. So I'm sure he's done it with them too.
All right. Anthony Zavarro says Jordan Peterson joining the Daily Wire was the straw that broke the camel's back that made me join Daily Wire Plus. Woo. The culture war pendulum swings. And I will say this too. The more power the Daily Wire generates through subscriptions, the more they're able to sign people like Jordan Peterson, which will in turn make the snowball get bigger and bigger and bigger. Mm-hmm. And I got to say, Daily Wire is the new CNN. I don't mean that in a way that's derogatory. CNN at one point was groundbreaking. It was in the 80s, right? They were like, we're going to do news 24/7.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you had this big deal.
They created the 24-hour news cycle.
And it was a big deal. It was a cultural shift.
Yep.
And now they're imploding.
Yep.
And the Daily Wire is taking off, displacing, they're the new upstart. They're not the first to do a streaming video on demand service. But I got to say, get woke or go broke has never been truer. These big streaming networks are just resting on their laurels. Yes, we know what CBS is, and so people sign up for it. But the Daily Wire is building and proving they're actually building something new. They're earning their place. That's meritocracy. And we're going to see it. Their movies are going to improve. Their shows are going to improve. And we're going to be like, I didn't want to watch. Have you guys watched Ms. Marvel? Have you guys seen it? No. Did you watch it?
I didn't, but we talked about it on the show a few times, and
I am watching
this
show.
cartoonishly bad.
It is beyond. It is okay.
I heard they actually used the word Latinx on the show.
Let me tell you about Ms. Marvel. Ms. Marvel is a show which is a high school course on British colonialism in Pakistan. That's what the show is. Because I swear they say partition every 5 minutes. And then there's a scene in one of the episodes where they're in Pakistan, and then they're like walking and they're talking about like, you've got magic powers. By the way, this is a house where people were forced to live because of partition. Colonialism had caused terrible problems in this country. And then start walking and I'm like, what? What did that have to do with anything in the show? They're genies being attacked by the government and you want to stop to pause to give me a lesson on partition? Yo.
That's most important.
The show is so bad. But, I watch this because I want to know. I want to review it myself, and I'm a big fan of Marvel. And watching this, I'm like, come on, man. I think Miss Marvel's cool. I played the Avengers video game. I dig it. But I'm not here for a lesson on partition and British colonialism in India. Okay? So can we just move the story on as to why this little girl, this teenager's got magic powers? And can we just have fun and inspire and create a strong female character who saves the day?
The answer is no.
No,
you can't.
Yeah, you can.
Well, and I think that,
not unless you recognize partition.
That's right.
She travels back in time to partition.
I try to picture the condescension and the low effort that's being put into trying to create so-called diversity by saying, remember Thor? Well, now she's black. And it's like, how, why not instead? I mean, there's all sorts of African folklore. Why not create new characters and have them be black and female or gay or whatever else? Why take existing characters and say, oh, it's okay, we're going to include you?
Hand-me-downs.
Because
it's
about
hand-me-down.
character assassination of the original fan base.
Well, and it's also, it's
done out of contempt.
Well, that's a great way to make money.
But it's not about making money.
I think it's ideologues who have nothing to lose.
But even if it's ideological, right? If I have this ideological desire to spread diversity, this isn't diversity. This is it's almost like a weird kind of blackface. It's like saying this character, and again, I'm using Thor. I don't even know if they've changed Thor, but
they changed Thor to a woman, but it's Natalie Portman.
Okay, well, but that's
just she took possession of Mjolnir.
Fair enough. But if
I don't think the storyline for the Mighty Thor is actually as bad as a lot of people complained about.
I don't follow any of this, but I've just seen so many examples of okay, this character is now gay or black or Muslim or whatever else, and it's like, why not instead have a new character that is that and that is uniquely that person? That seems like that would be far more powerful and empowering and inclusive and embracing diversity than just saying this one's black now.
Right. It's like, here's an existing character. We're going to just make him Latino, I guess. So that it's like, no, make a new hero.
Right. Thor's unique because it's whoever picks up the hammer becomes Thor. Eric Masterson was one at one point. There was a guy before Eric Masterson.
That might not have been a good example, but just Superman or whatever. I think
it's because they are not as creative as Stan Lee. They're afraid to take risks and to create something that'll fall on its face.
Well, that's something that's about to fall apart then, right? If you're not disrupting and creating new things, then you end up becoming stagnant.
They're pod people who are wearing these institutions like skin suits.
They're lizards.
Let's read some more. All right. Bonnie says, Albertan here. Can you guys please just annex us? It would be amazing, and no more Trudeau. Had so many scandals, he should be in jail. Only prime minister in history to be found to violate ethic laws.
They have oil too.
Dude, I thought of that while we were talking about it. How badass, how awesome if we were all, I think if the American Canada became one United States and we were all living in this decentralized freedom state, able to do it. Mexico is the United States of Mexico. That's the name of the country. Yeah. So I understand that centralization isn't the goal. I don't want a federal government controlling the Canadians, but dude, we're basically the same people with these similar ideals, and it's very.
I think I want to work from the bottom up to nullify the bad crap we have and then export that elsewhere. Create a domino effect of people more locally and more in tune with their actual community, their actual culture. And culture, by the way, does not have to be geographical or ethnic or anything like that. It can be values-based. It can be an online community that spans the entire globe. Community-based, decentralized order with an eye towards nullifying the bad centrally planned order that's being imposed on them. That's something that can become essentially worldwide, but it's focused at the local level, and it's focused on the empowerment of the individual and on voluntary solutions over bad coerced ones.
All right, let's read this one. We got Albie Dam says, Tim, per the UCMJ, Uniform Code for Military Justice, if a crime were to happen on a military base or off, the federal authorities, base commander, defense counsel, have jurisdiction over the military member first, as far as active duty goes. Yes. And on the military base, they have exclusive right to criminally try. But the point I was trying to get at with that is, What happens when you get to the point where the ideology is too strong?
Yep.
And someone in the state says, this person who lives in our city took a baby against its will to be killed on a military base. Imagine it this way. If there's a baby kidnapped and brought into a military base and then killed, and then the person comes back off, you might actually get people in the state rioting and demanding justice. It may then fall upon the federal government to say, okay, they literally killed a baby. But if the federal government doesn't recognize that as a crime, you could end up with people rioting. You could end up with the federal government saying, we will do nothing, and that's the point of conflict. So it's like you were saying, the reality of power.
Reality of power. The states have way more power at the state level. They got the guns, they got the numbers.
So it's just a question of, I understand it's not legal, but secession wasn't according to Buchanan either. It didn't stop them.
Yeah.
Will we get to that point where it reminds me of V for Vendetta, when the the inspector says someone will eventually do something stupid, and then it shows the little girl skipping wearing the mask, and then the cop shoots her, and then all of the locals just walk up and just beat the cop to death.
Yep.
They don't care what was legal at that point.
Yep.
Will we come to the point with abortion? And I've talked about this before. If blue state, if we get a national a national ban on abortion, because Republicans end up codifying it.
Yep.
Mike Pence says he wants it nationwide, just not enforced by the federal government. Seamus says he wants a national ban. If blue states then say, no, we won't stop. Let me ask you this. Do you think there's one person in this country who would take it upon themselves to stop them were it codified illegal nationwide? One person.
To stop the implementation.
Let's say federal government, Congress codifies, because Republicans sweep in November, then Trump gets reelected and he signs this bill, and then abortion is banned across the country. California says, nope, we're still going to keep doing it. Do you think there is one person in the United States for anywhere that would be like, I'm going to go to California to stop it?
Oh, to stop the Californians?
Yeah.
To stop? Yes. Absolutely.
And it's quite possible the federal government even does. Because if the federal government says it's illegal at the federal level,
that becomes a standoff,
then the federal government will go and enforce the law, which they say supersedes, if the will is there. Because, marijuana is illegal, but they're not going into these states. So it really just depends on if they're willing to do it. That's the point, the willingness to reach that level of clash.
The will of the people.
If you will.
That's part of the reality of power is whose side are the majority of people on, because they're also the ones voting. They're the ones making these kinds of decisions of what they're willing to tolerate. So, I mean, there are many different factors when you're figuring out power. It's not just guns and numbers. It's also the perception of what's right or wrong by the plurality or the majority. And all those things play into that. I mean, it can become a pretty big mess pretty quickly.
All right. Stephen Geiger says, USMC vet here. How will the military be able to provide abortions with the Hyde Amendment in effect? That's a good point.
Good question.
They say they currently do
Oh, because federal government can't.
provide funding for it. But they said they currently do. Now there is the very serious clash of...
Wow, I can't. I don't remember this. Has the Hyde Amendment been repealed?
Yeah, tell me about the Hyde Amendment really
So
quick.
the Hyde Amendment is basically an amendment that was added at some point to, I believe, Medicare funding that said that the federal government dollars cannot be used directly for abortions. So even Title IX funding for Medicare or Medicaid supposedly isn't supposed. It can go to Planned Parenthood, but it can't go towards the abortions. It can go towards everything else, and then that frees up money for the abortions, but it can't go towards the actual abortions. This would be a case where they are actually funding abortions, but now I'm trying to remember if the Hyde Amendment is still in effect or not.
I think it is. All right, we got Jesse Meek. He says, I'm a member of the Timcast website and simply can't send a pitch. I've tried several times a day for 10 days now and can't even report the problem. Is there a problem with the site? I don't know. We'll check. We'll look into that to make sure. But we don't accept pitches anymore.
Right.
Because we can't. We can't.
We shut down the email.
Yeah, we shut down the email.
That's
We can't accept pitches. So
too many legal implications, because if you send a pitch and then I don't even read it, but then we end up making the thing coincidentally, you can come at me for stealing your idea, and it's not worth it.
It just makes people angry.
Yeah.
It's just better that we don't do it. It's not so it's just basically like we don't want there to be any misconceptions or
Ill will because you couldn't respond to all
right.
of them.
Right. And then people are like, I had this idea, and then we had a similar idea, and it's just like it's better that we just take solicited pitches directly, which is the reality of the industry. I will say, we try to be scrappy and punk rock, but every day we learn exactly why businesses function the way they do.
Right.
And I've got friends at bigger companies. I won't name them, big CEOs, and they were like, It really is just the more people you hire, the more you become corporate, not by choice, by regulation.
Yep.
So like we're learning a lot about what the government mandates, and it's crazy.
Yep.
You know, people are like, man, my job sucks. The way they do these policies, I'm like, oh, those are legal. Those are legally enforced
Very
policies.
important.
Like the government makes them do it. So that's the reality of growing a big company.
Yep.
Nothing you can do about it. So it's like, stop your company from growing too big so you can stay being small and just having fun, or try and have a big cultural impact, and then the government steps in and says, now you have to do all of these things.
And then they're like, or then we can move our banks to Panama and become a multinational megacorp that lives outside of government bounds. Like, you see why that happens.
Yeah,
It's because-
you either there is not. You are not allowed to climb a steady ladder. You have to choose a lane, and the lane is either you grow up to a certain point, you don't get any bigger because it's not worth the hassle. You dive into it and become a company that is making way more money, but is just subject to so much regulation and becomes almost stagnant as a result. Or you go to the next level where you just own everything, and you see like someone like Jeff Bezos, like Amazon, literally has gone through each of those stages, and to the point now where Jeff Bezos is like buying entire media companies and putting out hit pieces against the Pentagon because they didn't approve his $10 billion no bid deals. And like, it's almost like becoming Lex Luthor, where he originally started his company out of a small office and went from small business all the way up to, the biggest mega company ever almost. So that's the progression of what happens. And that's all because of the fascist corporatist system that government imposes on the market.
All right. B. Anderson says, if they're not going to enforce abortion bans on federal property, what's going to stop them from not enforcing acts against little ones' crimes? I'm thinking about this. This is interesting. I tried looking up instances in which something is illegal at the state level, but not the federal level. And I can't, it's really hard to find.
It's usually not that way. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But now we're there.
Yeah.
So let's say the government says, you know what? Marijuana, federally legal, because the Democrats are really pushing it. We got some libertarian types in Congress. It may happen. But then you have a state like West Virginia where it's illegal. And they're going to say, yeah, well, federal law supersedes state law. But hold on. They're taking the law off the books. Just because it's not criminalized at the federal level doesn't mean you can do it. So what happens then if you have people in West Virginia going onto federal bases to do illegal drugs, as West Virginia would see it? Mm-hmm. Are they going to be like, we're okay with this? What if it goes even crazier? What if the Democrats actually say like heroin? And now you have heroin addicts wandering off federal property for whatever, maybe a military base, and they're all strung out and they're causing problems in the state. And the state's like, we got to arrest these people. Like, I don't think the state would tolerate people going into a military base, committing serious crimes, and then coming out.
The thing that might be worth looking into is post-prohibition. You had, it was legal but regulated at the federal level, but there were still many dry states and towns for quite some time after that. The dry states now, it's more like, you can't drink it in a restaurant or whatever. But like there used to be like, it's still illegal in this town. Do not be caught drinking or possessing it here. It would be interesting to see if there were any cases where like there was a military base there and there were people getting drunk on base and then, wandering out into town and whether or not they tried to arrest them because of that. I would guess that it would be no. That it would be because federal usurp state and it is federal property that they would likely say, no, you can't do that. But again, reality of power comes into place. If it reaches a cultural level, if it reaches a political level where it is most politically expedient for the people in charge at that state to say, you know what, we're going to enforce it anyway. We don't care what the Supreme Court says. We don't care what the White House says. We don't care what anyone says. We're going to do it anyway. Then the rule of law doesn't even mean anything.
All right, we'll get one more here. Quickly Saw 6 says the Army doesn't allow it under Article 119A, and TRICARE does not cover it. You need an ETP signed by a general officer after your provider gave you a memo saying you will die if you keep going. Perhaps they're just blowing hot air. The Pentagon is just saying, we're going to keep doing it, but they really don't do it anyway.
It could very well be.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and hit the bell.
Hit the bell.
That's right, hit that bell. And head over to timcast.com, become a member, because we're only about 800 and some odd thousand subscribers away from catching up to the Daily Wire. So if we can get 800,000, if we can get all 1.3 million people to subscribe, we'll be beating the But subscribe, support our work, because we're trying to get to that point as well.
Yes.
Doing new shows, hiring more and more people, and we're expanding quite rapidly. You can follow the show at Timcast IRL. You can follow me personally at Timcast. Spike, you want to shout anything out?
Absolutely. If you want to follow me, I'm Spike Cohen. I'm on all social media. I also have a show, actually a multi-time-a-week show on Muddied Waters Media. That's muddywatersmedia.com. We, too, are a scant 800 and so thousand away from subscribers away from beating the Daily Wire. So if you join us over at anchor.fm/muddywaters, you can become a subscriber today. And if you want to find out more about the grassroots revolution for liberty that we are building to set communities free and grow the liberty movement in America, go to youarethepower.net and see how you can get involved.
You can find me on Instagram or WeChat at CloserKitty. Sometimes I post articles on timcast.com and I promote them there. And I also want all of you to go in droves to Pop Culture Crisis on YouTube and subscribe and hit the bell, I guess. I never say that.
I got to pop in and talk about Ms. Marvel. I want to do a
Yeah.
review. I'm going to be like... I want to talk about Ms.
do
Marvel.
it, yeah.
If I get work done on time. You guys go live at 3. I have to get done
Yeah,
before
come
then.
tomorrow. I'll be on.
Oh, I can't.
Tim on Pop Culture?
I can't do it tomorrow. But we'll see. We'll see. Maybe next week with Ms. Marvel.
Yeah. Well, we go live every weekday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and noon Pacific. So come join us.
That's right. Come join us tomorrow, 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Pop Culture Crisis. I'll be there. I'm looking forward to it. I am Ian Crossland from iancrossland.net. Hit me up anytime you like. Spike, great to meet you, man.
Yeah,
good talking.
good to meet you too, man.
Thank you so much. I mean, it was really concise, really nice.
I appreciate that. Thank you, man.
See you later.
Very nice Pop Culture Crisis evening. I'm really glad they crossed over the 30,000 threshold and excited for what the future holds for them for sure. Brett works very hard on that show and Mary's a great addition too. You guys can follow me on Twitter and Minds.com at SarahPatchLids, as well as the site that Andy made for me called SarahPatchLids.me.
We will see you all over at timcast.com. Thanks for hanging out.
Bye, guys.